All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Grower Information Days for 2025. We're glad that you all made it today. We have a good program today focusing on carrots. And I'd like to introduce Dennis Van Dyke, the OMAF carrot specialist. He'll be the chair for the session today.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll be responsible for keeping everybody on time, yanking them off stage if need be today. Yeah, there's not much else to say or introduce. I'll kick off to our first speaker. It's Tyler Blauel here from the University of Guelph, and to talk about the carrot weed management project they've been doing.
Thank you, Dennis. All right, here we go. So as Dennis mentioned, my name is Tyler Blauel. I'm the facility technician here now at the research station. And today I just wanted to go over some herbicide trials that Shawn and I conducted last year here at the station. So first off, I just wanted to thank the Bradford Co-op and board, BASF, Syngenta, Bayer for funding these trials. And I also wanted to thank Clarence Swanton as well for all the work that he previously did looking at herbicides on carrots as well. So the two trials that we conducted last year were first a Zidua and Tough trial looking at different water volume rates post-crop emergence. And then the second trial we looked at was diflufenican at different product rates at pre and post-emergent crop stages. And just to be clear too, none of these herbicides are registered on carrots at the moment. So our main objectives of these two trials were to first assess if these carrots, if these herbicides have any efficacy, first off, and also check if they have any residual weed suppression or what type of residual weed suppression that they have. And really, we're trying to look at controlling weeds during that critical weed-free period up to the 8th leaf stage. Another big one that we were looking at was pigweed control. Do any of these herbicides have any good pigweed control? And we were also assessing for phytotoxicity as well. From our results, we didn't really find any consistent yield results affected by phytotoxicity. There was a little bit of burn on the crop, but yield wasn't impacted significantly. Okay, trial number one, looking at Zidua and Tough. So Zidua, it's peroxysulfone, it's a group 15. Tough, it's pyridate, a group 6. We also had Lorox in the mix as well, group 7. And we also used Gesagard as a pre-emergent as well. So here are all of our treatments. We're looking at Zidua, Tough, at their product rates here, and then also the different water volume rates. So the point of the water volume, the different water volume rates was just try to do, get as much coverage as we can. And the theory behind it, maybe higher water volume allows for better coverage on the ground, on the weeds. Over here, we also have the different crop, the application stages. So they were done at the bunny ear. We had a couple that were done at bunny ear and 2 to 3 leaf, and then one set or pair, the Zidua and Tough, at just the 2 to 3 leaf, and our Lorox was done at the 2 to 3 leaf as well. So each of our plots, they were comprised of 2 hills, 1 hill seeded with Celebunch and 1 with 2384. So this bar graph here is just showing the percent weed coverage that we were finding in each of the treatment plots. And these bars here represent 4 different periods that we assessed for weed coverage throughout the month of July. So it was basically a weekly assessment. And then up here, we're kind of isolating each of the treatments based on when they were applied. So these ones were applied at the bunny ear and 2 to 3 leaf, and then the 2 to 3 leaf over here. And then we also have our unweeded check at the side. So first off, the first thing you can kind of notice is that Zidua at the different water rates, there was some weed suppression. And what we also noticed was there was kind of a bit of a residual weed suppression as well. At the bunny ear application, which was June 24th, so it was before this first bar here, You can see that some weeds picked up, but they kind of maintained throughout the rest of July, which was interesting. Tough had a bit of a stronger impact, though not statistically significant, but numerically a bit of a heavier reduction in weeds. But then after that, the weeds kind of just started to take off in those tough application plots. In the bunny ear and 2 to 3 leaf, these were kind of our two better treatments that we were looking at. So these two, they were both applied with 200 liters of water per hectare, so a little bit lower than our lowest rate over here. But both applications were done this way. And here we see kind of the most weed suppression within the trial. When we look over at the 2 to 3 leaf stage, Zidua and Tough, at this point, the weeds were just a little bit too big to really have for the herbicides to really have a strong impact. And just to note here too, our Lorox application, it was done once at the full rate at the 2 to 3 leaf. Okay, so just to kind of isolate these treatments a little bit more and show you some pictures as well, just so you get a bit of a better idea of what we were seeing out in the trial. Okay, so looking at Zidua here at the bunny ear stage, again, so bunny ear stage application was done around June 24th. So right here, we're looking at pictures on July 11th and July 25th. And we also have our unweeded check here over on this column. So you can see that each of the plots at the different water volume rates, they all suppressed weeds, they all reduced weeds, decently clean plots. There are some escapes, obviously, that you can see. But with this one application, by the end of July, you can see a lot of weeds kind of picking up here, especially kind of pigweed. But again, a little bit cleaner for sure than the untreated check here. One thing that we noticed with the Zidua at this application stage was that there wasn't much like ground type weeds. There wasn't a whole lot of chickweed or anything like that, which was interesting. Now just moving along to Tough at the same stage, the bunny ear application. So again, Tough did a pretty good job of cleaning up the plot. You can see a number of small weeds here coming through. At this point, it's probably a good idea either now or soon to apply another herbicide to clean up the plot there. But later on the season, just with that one application at the end of July, we did start to see, more weeds pick up. But again, they're just a little bit better than the untreated check there. And just quickly, I'll show you the 2 to 3 leaf. Again, weeds were a little bit big at this time. So the 2 to 3 leaf application was done on July 12th. So just after these pictures were taken. So these are the weeds we're kind of dealing with at this time. And then after application, 2 weeks after or so, you can see that some of the weeds are a little bit burnt, a little bit set back, but they all pulled through and continued to grow there. So that's at this stage, the weeds were just too big to really have an impact, for the herbicide to really have an impact on them. So let's look at the two best treatments here, the double application of either Zidua or Tough at the bunny ear and 2 to 3 leaf stage. So bunny ear application, plot's looking pretty clean. There's another application here at the 2 to 3 leaf just after this picture. And overall, the plots, there's some weeds here too, but the plot is looking a lot better than our untreated check here. And same thing with Tough. You can maybe notice a couple more ground weeds kind of coming through with Tough, whereas Zidua, it seemed to be a little bit better at cleaning up some of those ground type weeds. Another assessment that we took was looking at the number of pigweeds that we were finding per plot. Nothing too astonishing here. All the treatments did reduce pigweeds a little bit numerically. I know it's not statistically. The best treatments being numerically anyways, the Zidua and Tough at the bunny ear and 2 to 3 leaf stage, reducing pigweeds. So just to summarize this trial here, the different water volume rates overall, they didn't seem to have a significant impact on herbicide efficacy. Zidua and Tough, they both provided some weed control. And Zidua seemed to have a little bit longer of a residual weed suppression period as well. And one interesting find was that Zidua, we found, was pretty good at controlling chickweed. And there was a little bit of herbicide damage, a little bit of burn from all of the herbicides applied. So now moving on to the second trial, we're looking at diflufenacin at different rates pre and post carrot emergence. So diflufenacin, it's a group 12, and we also had our group 7 linuron in here as well. Again, Gessigard was applied at as a pre-emerge. So we kind of had 2 pre-emerge products applied here too in some of the treatments. So you can see all of our treatments here, diflufenacin all the way through. We have increasing product rates, 60 to 120 grams of active ingredient per hectare. And they were applied at the pre-emerge, bunny ear, 2 to 3 leaf. And then also at the 2 to 3 leaf, we went with an even higher rate. We went to 180 grams AI per hectare. And then our Lorox in there as well too. So again, here's our percent weed coverage bar graph. Some of the main things to point out are that you can see some trends from 60 to 120 grams AI. You can see a slight decline kind of in the percent of weeds that we're finding in our plots. And one of the more interesting application periods was this bunny ear stage, where the highest rate did a pretty good job of controlling a lot of the weeds in the plots throughout the month of July. Again, at 2 to 3 leaf, the weeds were just a little bit too big for the herbicide to have too much efficacy. So again, let's look at some pictures here just to see how these treatments looked a little bit closer. So the pre-emerge application, by July 11th, you can't really see too much of a difference compared to your untreated check here. When you go down to July 25th, so this is, again, it's just a single application at the pre-emerge stage. There's quite a bit of weeds here. One thing you might note, though, is that there aren't as many pigweed plants in here compared to the untreated check. So now let's move along to the bunny ear stage, and this is when we started to find some interesting findings here. So the bunny ear stage, again, this was applied on June 25th, sometime up here, June 24th, I should say. And when we start looking down into kind of mid-July-ish, you can see this highest rate. It's actually looking pretty clean from one application at the bunny ear stage. And then by the end of July here, you can see some weeds coming through. This is a lot of chickweed kind of coming in here. Overall, the plot's not looking too bad, especially compared to the untreated check over here. And again, I'll just go quickly through the 2 to 3 leaf stage treatments. Again, 2 to 3 leaf, the weeds were just a little bit too big for the herbicide to really have much of an impact. You can see some burnt weeds here, set them back a little bit, but they did obviously push through after that. Not too much else there. I just wanted to point this out with Lorox real quick. So these were our Lorox. This is one of our Lorox plots. Obviously pretty clean, right? It's a good product. One thing we were noticing though, Lorox was applied at the 2 to 3 leaf stage. So that was applied right around here, July 12th. We had some pigweed in here earlier, and after the application, some of these pigweeds are noted here. They're a little bit banged up, a little bit burnt, and unfortunately, they just kind of push through. So Lorox is a good product, obviously, but sometimes it does not completely clean up the field and take care of pigweed plants. Okay, so this is kind of one of the more interesting findings that we found in the trial, especially with diflufenacin here. I'll just kind of go straight to it. At the bunny ear stage, at the 120 grams AI, we didn't find any pigweed plants come up throughout the month of July. And remember, this application was done once at the bunny ear stage, and at the highest rate, we didn't have any pigweed come through, which was really interesting to see. The lower application rates, they did a pretty good job too, especially when you compare it over to Lorax here. If you remember from some of the pictures earlier from the pre-emerge application, we didn't notice too many pigweeds in the pre-emerge plots. And you can see that decline in the number of pigweed that we found, especially when we started increasing our rates there. Okay, so in summary, with the diflufenican, it is an effective herbicide, especially at that higher 120 grams AI per hectare rate. When applied at the bunny ear stage, it was really good. And this may have a lot to do with the fact that at this point, the weeds were kind of just emerging to very small. So it was a really good time to hit them. And at this rate too, we also didn't find any pigweed in those plots, which was really interesting to see. So for some future trials, we're going to look at continuing to test Tuff and Zidua or any other herbicides that come about that may be of interest. And we're also looking to test these in some spray programs as well. So I'm the first presentation here, so I get to plug the Green Book first. So all of this research is found in our Green Book, all the research that we conducted last year at the station. It can be found here, so feel free to grab your copy. And with that, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So people online can follow along as well. Anybody have questions for Tyler? Tyler, do you know who owns diflufenican?
Yeah, Bear. That's diflufenican.
So if you're interested in controlling some pigweed at the bunny ear stage, maybe we should get a push in for a minor use label expansion, perhaps. Last chance, last call. Question online. Tyler, were there any considerations for comparing these weeding applications to organic weeding methods, especially for herbicide costs and labor?
Not exactly, no. We just left the untreated check there really for a visual comparison. If you didn't do anything, you'd have to go through and hand weed, and obviously there's a heavy labor toll there as well.
Do you have a hand weeded check or no?
No, we didn't have a hand weeded check. I think we all kind of know what happens if we just leave a field with no herbicides. So nobody's doing that. It's not really economical at all either. So
awesome. Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Wendy. Wendy Zhang is, well, a couple of jobs, I guess, but one is farm manager down in Chatham area for a carrot and onion grower. And the other one is a PhD candidate at the University of Guelph looking at weed management in carrots and onions. So Wendy is going to talk to us about weed control on carrots and onions on mineral soil and her experience. So welcome, Wendy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy. 4 years carrots and onion grower, definitely pretty short compared to everybody else here. And we grow in mineral soil only. So whatever I say today, don't take it too serious on Muck soil because it make a big difference. That's like what I learned from Dr. Swanden in last few years. I tried in our field. It didn't work all the time. So we have to do some changes accordingly to your situation. But here is something I learned from my experience as a carrots and onion grower. And I did fail so many times, but that's the way I learn. And that I guess that's the way we learn. So the top concern for our onion, I know it's a carrot section. Our top concern is lap squatter. And we found the best way to do it is do Frontier Max at the perfect time, which is like 5% loop stage. And after that, like, because there's a 1 year I missed one spray and it just make the half field all covered by lump squatter. It doesn't stop coming up, just keep coming, keep coming. We got like 120 people hoeing that farm. It still cannot stop it. So we end up harvest almost nothing from that farm. But the other half of the farm, we got Frontier Max, just perfect time, and it works so good. So Frontier Max is an important thing we use. And after the onion emerged, I tried a heavy dose Go and Partner, just one shot, and make sure I kill those lump squatter at the small stage before 4 leaf. Because I find if I do sub-lethal dose and I come back twice, come back 3 times, the only thing I does is injure the onion and affect the quality and introduce disease. So sometimes it looks like here, it may look scary because I hurt the onion as well, but that's just the first leaf and the loop stage and the flag stage. So if you have to do it hard. That's something I learned in the last few years. Don't coming back. It mess up the spray schedule, it injure the onion, and it's costly. And by the way, those onion come back no problem and produce pretty good yield. And the other issue we have is a bubble leaf. And I found this thing, I mean, there's not much report with resistance, like firm resistance report yet, but the Go and Partner, I tried twice and tried heavy dose, it still doesn't work. It may relate with the leaf stage or maybe resistance, but there's one thing we can try is a pre-onion emerge do Partner. And then it can taking care of the bubble leaf pretty good. But once the onion emerge, I have to reduce the rate and the time might be a little bit late. But another thing works is laser weeder. Yes, we bought that laser weeder and we tried it. It works pretty good with bubble leaf, almost like 100% or 99, I supposed to say 99% accurate targeting bubble leaf, and it kill it, it doesn't come back. However, to use that laser weeder properly, because it works slow and it causes soil compaction. So when you harvest the onion, it may cause the harvester sloped. Then you miss 1 row of harvesting. So in order to do it properly, I would suggest to do like rotation the tracks. Do not just follow your old tracks, just switch it a little bit. Make sure all the rows being smashed or compact evenly. That way your onion harvester stay leveled. And to use that laser weeder properly, and you have to have a very good operator who is patient to drive like 2 to 4 miles per hour. And also you have to do it as early as possible, because once the weeds is so big, you can't shoot them anymore. But it's a perfect tool for control bubble leaf for me if I can kill them with herbicide. The other big challenge is a nut. I still don't have a solution for it. Dual seems work, but we can't use it in onion. So this is a issue in onion only, not carrots, because the Loras can take care of the nut pretty good as well. We have a crop rotation with corn to use permits in 2 years continuously, which can suppress the nut into a low level. But still it came up eventually or occasionally to bother my onion production. I can show you a picture, and the planting time, it might be a solution for this weeds. And another thing that I'm hopeful some researcher can find a solution with stem folium. It's such a bad disease and just spread so fast in maybe 2 days. You miss that field 2 days. Wow, it come back like looks like not onion anymore. And the only solution we have so far is not solution, but we try to spray micronutrients, include potassium, copper to make sure the onion are healthy. That's the only thing we can slow down a little bit, but still I got stem folium every single onion, every single field. So I truly don't have a solution for this one. And this is my onion field. I have no shame to share this because that's what happened last year. As you can see, we put Frontier Max, perfect time, all the herbicide sprayed at perfect time according to the instruction and my experience. I put Frontier Max at 5 leaf, like 5% loop. I put 2 Pro after hoeing, And I got 4 ounce goal and 4 ounce partner at the second leaf stage. So this is the earliest I can do. The heavier or earlier will cause too much onion injuries. And then I come back with 4 ounce or 6 ounce goal according to the needs. But that's what happened before harvesting still. So we collect the sample, send to Mafra, it come back with 100% group 14 resistance. So all the sample I submit, group 14 resistance. So that means the herbicide not working, and we have to find a solution for it. That's why I decided to do a PhD project with Dr. Tadif to learn about what we can do with group 14 herbicide and how that happens. Currently, only Brazil, North Carolina, and China has this group 14 herbicide, and now Chatham is the 4th one. I mean, we haven't published any article about it yet, but that's what creates come back the results to for us. And something really bad about pigweed, I guess everybody know, but the more I learn about it, it sounds like, wow, how come he can be so bad? Because it can produce 200,000 seeds per plant, maybe more. And it can survive more than 20 years. So you think water hemp is bad, but if you do 5 years good job, you probably control it. But this pigweed, maybe your son, your grandson still fighting it. It just keep coming back, and you lose 1 year, it build up the seed bank again. So it's this is the seed I use in a growth room to do herbicide tests. The left one is we collected in 2013 Simcoe, Ontario. Got 100% germination so easily. And the red one is 2011 from our farm. Someone submitted before I worked for the company, and it got 50% germination. So you got 1 escape, end of the game. And that's my carrots field. And the only thing you can see is the pigweed. And a week after this, actually, I have Kristen and Danny's visit this farm. The week after, you can't see carrots anymore. Just take 1 week and 1 rain. It grows so fast. And well, I still remember too, like the first year when I worked for the company, my boss told me, don't worry about pigweed. The goat can take care so easily. No, it doesn't. First year, I saw few weeds standing in the farm. It's fine. The farm looks clean. Second year, patches. Third year, it turned into like this. And really, I was just kept panic. It looks like it's not that bad, but week after, you can't harvest this farm anymore. So we worked this one in. That's what happened when you accumulate your seeds bank and don't control it early enough. So if you see one pigweed in your field, pull it out. Don't let it stay in your farm. 1 weed means the war starts. So be very careful with this weeds. And also for carrots, we don't have that much option to control pigweeds labelly right now. In onion, we can still do Chateau, Go, but for carrots, the only thing we can do is Lorax. And last year, I did every single weeds counting after I sprayed Lorax. It only do 40% control for all the weeds in general. So it's not an effective tool for mineral grower anymore. And we're facing a short, like we don't have enough herbicide to control these weeds. Plus, I think a lot of grower in Muck area, you do onion and carrots rotation, right? If you use so much group 14 herbicides in your rotation, no matter you rotate carrots with corn or soybean, but you have too much vegetable in your crop rotation, those herbicides didn't get rotation. So those weeds still developing their like the selection pressure still increase. This is the greenhouse study I did last winter, and I'm not sure you can see clear, but here is the goal. This one is a goal at half label rate, and the weeds actually came over from it. Like even in greenhouse, it's supposed to work better. The herbicide is supposed to work better in greenhouse situation environment, but actually those weeds come back. It shocked me so bad, like because even in the field they don't come back that fast. But it just that's the seeds I collect from the resistance field. Like they're very strong. Something I just keep thinking, is there anything I did wrong to make the herbicide not working that good? Because some neighbor actually they have a clean field. So one of the reason I'm thinking is that related with the spray time? because the pigweed doesn't came as early as the lamb's quarter. I shouldn't put all my strong weapon, my strong herbicide at the beginning of the planting. I should wait until the pigweed really came up and then spray, and targeting this weed specifically, and do my Frontier Max and Prowl at early stage to control the lamb's quarter. So the pigweed came out a little bit later than the lamb's quarter, about a month. It really depends on which field you are and which area, but for us, it's about 1 month later. So I put my strong herbicide later to use it. And also, one bad thing about pigweed is it keep emerging until you harvest. I mean, for us, it is. So I have to stretch out my spray schedule. What I tried is rotate the contact herbicide with pre-emerge. I do one contact, I do one pre-emerge, and make sure every time I got machine or a hoer walk through the field, I put some pre-emerge to make sure they didn't disturb the soil too much and bring more seeds up. My boss doesn't like my idea to injure the onion, but what I found, it did a good job. The onion looks like completely wipe out. I was so worried and so scared, but after 2 weeks, no extreme weather, but be very careful, don't just follow it, because it got a lot of requirements. It has to be a good weather, no frost, no heavy rain, and I got a good luck last year. I put a lethal dose goal, which and a little bit earlier, actually, first leaf stage of onion. So I almost kill all the onion, but I kill all the weeds as well. And it lasts very long. And after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the onion come back, no problem. Actually, that's my best field last year. But it looks so horrible right after I spray. I mean, again, don't follow it. I probably just have a good luck last year, and I was worried I'm gonna lose my job. So it's pretty scary, actually. And like what I keep mentioning is do not miss the best time to spray. Time is really critical. Even I try do the herbicide dose test in greenhouse. If I spray after 4 leaf stage of the pigweed, no matter how hard I do, I can't kill it anymore. So for the pigweed, spray at 2 leaf stage, whatever tool you use, like a spot spray or board casting, spray at 2nd leaf. I know some label says 4 leaf is fine, 4 leaf is not fine anymore, at least for us. So we do early spray hard, shoot it as 1 shot. And I know a lot of organic grower or conventional grower love cultivation. Personally, I'm not a big fan of cultivation because every time I disturb the soil, I screw my protection from the pre-emerge herbicide and wasting my money. And also to managing 600 acres onion, I don't have enough time to fit in another pre-emerge or extra pre-emerge. I can't arrange a schedule anymore. I have every single products I put into the field. It has to be the mandatory one, the essential one, or the work one. Otherwise, I'm wasting money, wasting time, and also miss the best time to control those issues. That's another reason why I don't like sublethal herbicides or microdose herbicide. It causes too much injuries. Those onion, I'm sure everybody familiar is gold injuries, frost injuries, and here there's some herbicides injuries, and those are that's what I think is the issue for stem folium. I don't have a healthy onion. They are so easy to attack by those disease or purple blotch and botrytis. And in order to push back a little bit my fungicide spray, I have to ensure the onion are healthy. And that way I can stretch out my herbicide arrangement. And this is a picture of our field last year. And you can see it's the same farm. The only difference is the planting time. So the left is the early planting. The red is the later planting. The biggest issue is the nusage. So if I can control the nusage, my best way is planting as early as possible. And I put all my herbicides in, I finish all the spray, and onion are big enough. Even nusage came up, I can still get something harvestable and good quality. But that's the red one is what we replant after we got a drought. And it just messed up everything. And I missed the best time to control the weeds because it came up faster than the onion. and also the message came out. I can't control it anymore. And that's finally a good thing happened is I got a good onion, like almost a meter long. That's the goal I gave to myself, grow a meter tall onion. That way it can give a big bob. And it almost there. And I got 11 leaves, maybe more, and it gave me a good yield and good quality on that farm. So plant early, so you get, that way you got time to arrange your herbicide spray and also make the onion stronger before the weeds are too big. This is the field trial we tried last year to try different herbicides, kind of just for fun. And I don't have too much evidence if those herbicide works or not. But if you can see, there's some squares in the middle of those pictures. That's my different treatments. Some of the herbicide works actually. Zidra works, Tough works. We tried Regalon post planting, but before onion came out, onion or carrots came out. That's the difference I found Regalon versus Roundup is Regalon works better in the cold environment. So if you have the interest to try it, maybe take a try. At a low dose, that doesn't need to be a full label rate, just a half label rate. And before the crop emerged, 3 days before, according to the requirements. And it can control like at least half vulva leaf and some other weeds. And we have the, we haven't arranged the detail yet, but we are going to try more herbicide in mineral soil this year, which include dual, Zidra, Regalon post-planting. And I know some people talk about group 27 herbicides in America. We have the interest to try it, but I tried it in the greenhouse. It killed all my onion. So I have to be careful with that one and see how it goes. The summary of what my thought about weed control in carrots is onion is spray post-plant, but pre-emerge of the crop. That's the Regalon products I talk about, but you have to be careful with soil cracks, the temperature, the rain, because if you have soil cracks, those Regalon may get into your crop. Then you have to be careful with it. And temperature, if it is a warm temperature, Roundup is definitely cheaper, so go Roundup. But if it's cold, I found Regalon works better. And I prefer to spray lethal dose to the weeds. It may injure your crop a little bit, but they can come back no problem, then it's fine. But this is for early season as well. You don't want to injure the crop later season, it's too hot. And also I like to do pre-emerge herbicide rather than contact herbicide, because the contact can injure the crops more as well. At the same time, it control the weeds. But if you can keep up with pre-emerge herbicide to prevent the weeds come out, why not? It doesn't hurt the crop and also did a better job. But I mean, just a theory. I don't have fully functional plan to like, how can I keep up with pre-emerge yet? And this is something I learned really bad, because there's 1 year, it's so cold. I said, maybe feed the onion a little bit to make it stronger. So I put the micronutrients Terra Drive. So it included everything in it. I sprayed the whole onion field. What I found is I can't kill the weeds anymore, because at the same time I'm feeding the weeds, I'm feeding the, at the same time feeding crop, I'm feeding the weeds. I say, oh my God, I did a wrong decision. So do not spray micronutrients before you control the weeds. Otherwise they take advantage of it. And early planting, I heard different opinion about it. Some people prefer late planting to make sure it's warm, it got enough heat to come up. But I prefer early planting, because one reason we have a bigger acreage. Another reason is easy for me to stretch out the spray. And crop rotations or herbicide rotation, you have to pick one. Either rotate your crop more or rotate your herbicides more. Like that, either way, it will give the weeds more, reduce the escape of the weeds. If you have the issue with resistance weed, don't afraid to contact me. I can come out to collect the sample for you, or maybe contact Mafra, Kristen Obed to collect some samples. We can submit the sample for you to let you know if you have the same issue we had. I hope not, but I know eventually it will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy?
Yes.
Are you guys looking into that robotic sprayer?
We bought one already. I will, if you like to hear.
The question was about the eco robotic sprayer, and they already bought one. So we'll find out more next year. Yes, Matt.
So how long did you have to wait between the permit application and putting onion or carrot back in the field?
We do it as early as possible, so it almost 12 months. Yeah. We haven't had any issue with the crop rotation yet.
And there's a question online. This is for both Wendy and Tyler. It's kind of a 5-part question here. What does your seed bed preparation look like? Do you use any stale bedding, any flame weeding pre-emergence? And if tine weeding is part of weed control methods, or if that's too much cultivation for your system?
Well, we do steel bed. We do 30-inch bed, and we plant 3 rows of onion on the top of it. And we do 60-inch bed for the carrots as well. For 60-inch bed carrots, we can do cultivation, and then, but to do that, we don't put pre-emerge rather than prowl anymore. So we cultivate it first and then put dual accordingly. I mean, but my key is I don't put pre-emerge before cultivation. I put pre-emerge herbicide after cultivation. And sorry, what else he asked?
They also asked about if you use any flame weeding for pre-emergence.
Yeah, that's the Regulon I recommend. We use we tried Roundup in 4 years ago. I found it doesn't work properly, and it did not even kill chickweed strong enough. So I switched to Regulon, and works better in the cold weather. But I go with 50 gallons per acre, so more water, and also I do half label rate. That works pretty good for small weeds before the crop came up.
Some of those rows look like in the trough that there wasn't as much weeds. Do you guys, is that just from soil compaction or
Well,
advanced spray at all?
Oh, this one? This one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, we try to save it. We did cultivation between the row, but it looks okay now. After 2 weeks, it's still more weeds come up. So this pigweed just keep emerging season long. And also after we did the cultivation, we hurt some of the pigweed and they don't grow tall anymore and make the weed whacking even harder. We can't zap it, we can't weaken it because it stays short, start to set branching.
Last chance. Yes.
I'm curious to know what your soil analysis is at the start of the year, like your calcium, magnesium levels, like in relation to each other. What are the ratios of that?
Yeah, so our soil is 2 to 4% organic matter, definitely way much lower than yours. And we have a very high calcium content, something like 9,000 ppm. The unit is wrong, around 9,000. So it's very, 90%. So it's really high. And our K-Mac ratio is pretty variable. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But what we did last year is we did precision fertilizer. We put K-Mac and potash in the fall, and we do variable rate through the field. Hopefully it can help us fix the K-Mac ratio issue. And but for the calcium, what I heard is the method we use currently cannot give us an accurate calcium rating yet. I'm not sure. This is something I heard last month. So I'm not sure how the calcium can affect our soil. But we still put 100 gypsum pounds per acre every year. No matter what, I put something in there.
Looks like you're off the hook. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next up, we have our first industry update, and that will be from Bayer. So Margaret.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Margaret Alexiou. I'm a fruit and vegetable agronomist with Bayer Crop Science. I'm not alone here today. Right here, I have Sherry Tedford. She's also with Bayer. She's our customer solutions agronomist. So she kind of sits between research and sales, doing trials and whatnot, also including trials done here at the Muck. So if you want to talk to me or Sherry later, we're around. Okay, so honestly, nothing new to update you guys on. We have no new products, no new updates. So I decided to use this time as just a little refresher on what Bayer has in our toolbox to help you guys with both your carrot and onion crops. So I know today's carrot day, but I'm doing a bit of both. So first off, onion fungicides, what we've got to offer you guys is Aliette. This will get control of your downy mildew and purple blotch. We've got Luna Tranquility labeled for botrytis, purple blotch, stemphyllium. And we've got Scala also labeled for botrytis, purple blotch, neck rot. Do want to point out, I have a little statement here in fine print, but resistance to stemphyllium in onions has been documented, as I'm sure you guys are aware. So to avoid further development of this to avoid further development of fungicide resistance to group 7 and 9, we don't recommend applying more than 2 sequential applications. But yeah, so Luna is our group 7 and 9 that I'm speaking on. Enter. And then now into our carrot fungicides that we have in our portfolio. We've got Flint. It's called Flint Extra now. You guys may have used Flint before. It was a wettable granular. I guess that's kind of an update. But now we've phased away from the wettable granular formulation into a liquid. So we've got Flint Extra. So this is labeled for Alternaria leaf blight and Cercospora leaf spot in your carrots. And that's a group 11. And then we've also got Luna Sensation. So this is labeled for Alternaria, powdery mildew, and cottony. Again, this is a group 7 and 11. So the group 11 that's in Luna Sensation is actually Flint. And then into insecticides, these ones are for onions. We've got 3 in our toolbox. We've got Decis for onion thrips, Movento also for onion thrips, and then Oberon for the 2-spotted the spider mite, which this is a new label addition as of like 2 or 3 years ago. So you see the spider mite at the bottom there, that's what you'd be finding. And then into the carrot insecticides here, we've got Admire for your aphids and leafhoppers, Movento for your aphids and whiteflies, and Savanto also labeled for aphids, leafhoppers, and whiteflies. So photos there at the bottom of what you might be seeing and when you'll need to spray. Yeah. And then one product I'll talk about is Minuet. This is our biological fungicide. This one's labeled in many crops. So it's labeled in both onions and carrots. And if you guys are growing anything else, it's likely labeled for that. Just look at our label. But Minuet, it's a biological. The active is a Bacillus subtilis. There's lots of Bacillus products out there, but we have a strain called QST 713. This is the one that we sell, and we're happy with the results. So key diseases, this suppresses. It's not in control of anything, but in addition to your current spray programs, this offers suppression of Fusarium, Phytophthora, Pythium, and Rhizoctonia in many crops. So again, you could use this in your carrots, onions, cabbage, broccoli. So some key things here. This is an organic product. If you're an organic grower, you can use it here. 0-day PHI, 4 hours re-entry interval. So the way this works is you want to apply it with the seed. We recommend in furrow or in with your planter transplant water because you want this bacteria in contact with the roots and the fine root hairs. So years ago, we had a product called Serenade Soil. It was a mess to work with. So we relaunched the product, reformulated it. So now we have got more concentration of the bacteria spores, and it just mixes much better with whatever you're putting in your tank. So Minuet. So the way it works is it colonizes on the roots and overall kind of gives the plant like a probiotic effect. It increases its uptake of nutrients. and kind of gives the plant a better immune system, if you want to say it like that. So when this bacteria is on the root, the colonization starts pretty quickly within hours. And then the roots are completely colonized on the plant within 2 to 3 days. And once these bacteria are there, they can't get washed off. They are on the root. And as the plant is growing, the I don't know how to use a pointer, but as the fine roots grow, the bacteria grows with it. So as these as they grow, they continue to colonize and protect the plant as the whole time, essentially. So this is under a microscope, just kind of showing that minuet kind of acts like a suit of armor on the roots. So on the left there, that's an untreated root. There's not a whole lot going on. But when the root was treated with minuet, the bacillus bacteria, there's a whole lot going on there. Bacteria are protecting those roots. So overall, makes the plants more vigorous, creating more resilient crops, makes them more resilient to drought stresses, heat stresses, and whatnot. This was a trial, not an official trial, but a little side-by-side done in a field here in Bradford with beets. See the left row there versus the right row there. The one on the right was treated with minuet, and the crop appeared to have almost be like 1 week ahead in growth. And then again, kind of nearing harvest, I just pulled some samples and didn't take official yields or whatnot, but you could see just quality there was improved in our treated check there. And then this is data in potatoes, but in our field trials in the US, we found when minuet was added, an average of 6% yield increase. And again, in tomatoes here, these were done in Ontario, an average of 8% yield increase was found when minuet was used. So I do think if you wanted to use minuet in any of your crops, you would see better quality, but it's worth a shot. And if you do try it, I recommend doing a side-by-side, leave a check strip to make sure you're seeing something as well. So if you come by the Bayer booth, we're just outside the door to the left here. I've got 3 guides. We've got our onion, carrot, and brassica quick reference guides. So it's got all our products listed and timings when to use them. And yeah, my contact info is in the top there if you guys need. So thank you. Yep. Yep. We haven't found any issues tank mixing with minuet yet, but yeah, that one we'd be comfortable with mixing together.
Yeah, Doug.
Yeah. Not that I'm aware of. It's a biological, like sometimes they work really well, sometimes they're just average or comparable to what you are doing. That is just kind of the risk you take with biologicals. But was your quality different near the end there, or? Okay. Yeah, like you might not always see a line side by side. Right. Okay. Yeah, you might not always see a drastic side-by-side difference. That was kind of a one-off or yeah. 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 As far as we know, temperature doesn't have an effect on it.
All right. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a talk on ag robots and research done here at the station. And Speaking for that will be Geoff Farintosh, currently employed by the University of Guelph.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today and letting me talk a little bit about robots in the marsh. I thought I'd give an update on what we did the past year, what the plans for next year, and maybe just start a little bit at the beginning here. We started working with robots here in the marsh in 2022. You might remember seeing some of these ones around. We had the Nexus Le Chèvre. This robot had little mechanical arms that would physically pull the weeds. It had a long way to go. It wasn't really market ready at the time, just building that model. We also had the Nio Dino from France. That robot, the limitation was really just that small area where you could attach your tooling. It was fairly limited. The following year, we got something we had a lot more success with. This was the Farm Droid. This robot was initially designed for sugar beets, and the two main goals, at least initially, were to seed and weed. When it went out there, it would geotag each seed. So the selling point was that it would kind of remember where those seeds were. And then when you came back, it would weed around it. The downside of this was this robot was very slow because it was completely solar powered. When we got it out there, we just started seeding. It can only plant in a single row. We can't do like a double row like a lot of growers do here. So we tried putting onions through at a similar population. And to do that, we found it was even slower than we expected, just because we were planting them so close together. Kind of the max that we could go was 200 meters an hour. So, 0.2 kilometers an hour. It was kind of painfully slow. Part of this is that seeding disc, just how fast it's having to spin to get those seeds out in time. And then also as those seeds fall down, having the seed valve to kind of geotag them and everything, let them fall where they should be, that could barely keep up too. So we tried a few different things. In the middle here is the conventional, what you usually see with the double rows, 5 centimeters between seeds. We tried to kind of get that same population in a single row, 3.4 centimeters between seeds. But again, we had to go very slowly. So then we tried taking that same seeding disc and just drilling triple the amount of holes. Instead of 5, we had 15 holes on the right side there. And we didn't tell the robot this. So instead, when it dropped what it thought was 1 seed, it was actually dropping 3 seeds. The idea being it would be kind of like the way transplants are done, and we get these clusters. We really didn't know how this was going to work out. When we first looked at the emergence numbers, we didn't feel too good about it. And you can see in the middle, those triple clusters only had half the amount of seeds actually coming up compared to the conventional. But as the season started to go on, those triple clusters on the right, they started to really fill in the space. Even the singles would kind of push away nicely, although sometimes you get onions that would get kind of squished in between. It seems like if the onions kind of have an idea of the space, especially in the muck soil, they really push apart nicely. And when it came time to harvest, we actually had no significant differences in yields. We actually had larger onions with the triple clusters there in the middle, and more jumbos and more larges. Our conventionals here probably were seeded a little bit too high of a density, but at least it was a promising result overall. We didn't have this information when we first put this in a grower field, so we just did it slow and steady. I think we went at 225 meters an hour, single row. The onions all came up really nicely, super straight lines. But the following year, to try to go faster and kind of get to a point where it'd be more usable, we tried to make our own seeding discs. We 3D printed some, played around with 20 different designs. It looks simple, but just getting like the loft and the angle that it falls out of, it all makes a difference. And with these new discs, we were able to go much quicker. We were able to go even at 650, 750, these were actually the same amount of onions we were getting compared to going at 200 before. So when we went back with these, the grower wanted to try seeding at these higher speeds with those new discs. In our own trial on station, I think we got everything a bit more dialed in. We were seeing consistent yield results across the board, no significant differences, whether we did a single with the robot, the triple with the robot, or conventional. This result is from the grower field. There's a bunch of asterisks here I'll point out. So this on the left here is what the robot did in those triples at a much higher speed. Beside that, he had seeded some own onions, which didn't produce as much, but the big asterisk is that these were a different cultivar, so it can't really be compared. He had some transplant onions that were the same cultivar, but again, they had a pretty big a head start compared to the robot ones, but still really interesting results. We're in the ballpark. We're pretty happy with how this robot does in terms of seeding, and we're just going to continue to try to increase that speed even more. we're getting to the point where we're hoping to do around 10 acres per day with the robot. On the weeding side, there's still a bit more to be desired. We started with these tines. They were pretty good at getting the weeds, but then they'd quickly get caught up and start pushing soil onto the onions and whatnot. Haggerty, Agrobotics, they worked to get these new knives installed this year. They worked okay. The problem was just modulating the height on them. We found they had a student go out there and just kind of count weeds before and after, and they were getting about half of them, which is still nice to have, but I think there's still tons of room for improvement on that. Another problem we had is just once the onions start to get big, the robot has a hard time going through them, especially with that third wheel in the middle. So luckily now FarmDroid will sell you a fourth wheel, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. They're not powered, but we just found even still it had a way easier time turning around, didn't get stuck at all. You could also raise the units. There's still a lot of complex geometry under there, which can get caught in the onions. So we're hoping we can 3D scan under there this year and kind of build some guards to help at least guide the onions around that too and keep it working a little bit longer. FarmDroid is also working on stuff on their end. They have a green-brown sprayer that you can get for it now. And I just learned that they also have, you can install drip tape irrigation with it while it's out there seeding as well now too. So yeah, a lot of promise for that robot. We're going to be pushing it a little bit further again this coming year. The other robot we've been doing a lot of work with is the Oreo from Nio. So before they had the dyno, you couldn't really do too much. You need all custom tooling. This one's a lot easier. You just have a 3-point hitch. You can kind of slap on whatever will fit in that area. It's a much faster robot, around 5.5 kilometers an hour. But the downside is it's battery powered. So you have to charge it at the end of each day. It usually goes around 8 hours or so. We first got it, we were just driving it, making straight lines, made it easy to do our transplants and whatnot, seed carrots. We threw a cultivator on it, and then they work with another company called Till & Hague, which has a camera-guided hitch system. So you can see the camera at the top of the screen there. Basically, you tell the camera what color the crop is and roughly how far apart the rows are, and it tries its best to keep it in the middle. We found this did a pretty good job. Whether there was barely any crop or there was tons of weeds, it did a pretty good job keeping it center. The problem is this takes up a tiny bit of room, which is pretty valuable when you're kind of limited by how much space you have between the wheels there. We also started working on a spray system. We have 2 55-gallon tanks, over 200 liters each. We had one that could spray directly on the rows, and then we also had a second boom and tank that would spray in between the rows if you wanted to do a non-selective herbicide or something. You might remember we kind of had the Home Depot buckets to start out there. Now we've 3D printed some that we can change the angle as the rows start to fill in, and they've worked a lot better. If we break one, it's easy to just print out another. To make sure we're not just breaking down out there and spraying product, whatever, Haggerty set it up with the Raven system now, CR7, and this robot very quickly has gained a bunch of different sensors and monitors, and it comes kind of as a bare chassis, but now it's doing pretty well out there. This past year, we did some trials where we're comparing it to a tractor, now that it can do a lot of the same jobs in terms of cultivation, spraying, and whatnot. We had a master's student, he'll be here tomorrow, IFX, who was monitoring a lot of that. He'll have some reports. We found it didn't do quite as well as the tractor, but a lot of that was on us. One thing I mentioned is this was the only cultivator we had that fit with the camera guide system, and it was just way too skinny within the rows. So later on, we ended up switching it for a better cultivator. We just had to ditch the camera system, and we should have done that much sooner. We're also playing around with the wick weeder, especially in crops like beets, where there aren't options. I should mention we're doing these trials in carrots and beets, mineral and muck soil right now. So we're still kind of developing that system as well. Hopefully, it'll be a bit more useful to us as we go forward. Really, we want to be able to do from seeding all the way till harvest. So Haggerty brought out these Wizard seeding units. It's a vacuum seeder, again, all powered by batteries. We found these worked okay on mineral, but not so great on the muck soil. At least setting the weight and stuff, we were just having a lot of issues with it. We played around a little bit trying to find a shoe design that would work for it. But I think for this coming year, we're going to do something a bit more like a traditional system, put a Stanhay on. And the idea is to have this compete kind of against the FarmDroid. We're going to have them out both planting around 7 acres of onions each, and then they'll go off after. This will be working in carrots and beets, muck and mineral again. And again, we'll be collecting all the data, seeing how much time goes in, what the costs are like, and how it all adds up. And hopefully it'll become a somewhat viable solution or maybe useful to some people here in the future. Again, FX is going to talk more about this tomorrow, but I thought I should mention it quickly. This Piketa lens system, their leaf evaluated nutrient system. Basically, the idea here is you can take a leaf, you scan it, it uses some advanced spectrometry and AI to try to give you an estimate for different macro and micronutrients. We've been working on an onion system that's coming along now, also carrots and celery, but we're hoping if the onion system looks good for this coming season, there might be the opportunity for growers to bring their leaves in here to the station. You can scan them, get your results in a couple minutes, and then we'll also send them to the lab so you can get those results as well. It'll just help us and Piketa collect more information. I'm not 100% sure if we're doing that. We're waiting to see how the new system looks, but I just thought I'd mention that quickly. Since I'm going a little quick here, I thought I would talk about a few other robots milling about Ontario, just to get some ideas out there. NIO has a wide range. You know, they have ones in vineyards like the TED that goes over the vines. They have the Joe that goes between them, and they have the Oz, it's a much smaller one, more for market gardeners. They have the Burrow. This comes in bigger sizes now as well, where you can just kind of set routes, have it follow people around. People are using greenhouses, setting up solar farms, just having a preset pass. I think a lot of nurseries are finding use for them as well. Another one, this is kind of similar to the Oreo. You can just have a tool carrying setup, except this one, the Agrointelli Roboti, I believe is powered by a Kubota like diesel generator. So you can kind of leave this one out going all day long. You don't have to worry about stopping and charging it. I should mention Geoff from Haggerty is here today. If you want to talk to him about some of this stuff, I'm sure they have an Agrointelli, a bunch of the NIO products. They also have a new one, a Monarch. It's like an autonomous electric tractor. So a few new things coming around here, and if we could find some use for them in the marsh, that'd be great. Again, a lot of you might be aware of the Eco Robotics new spray system they have. So this is a targeted spray system. You can choose whether you want to spray the crop, or not the crop, just the weeds. Rather than really trying to aim it, they just have a ton of different nozzles, and then their system just actuates them when they're needed. And so far, that's looking really promising. Starting to see drones getting bigger and better each year. It's just kind of a matter of time before we can start using those in more applications. This one's not in Ontario, but I thought I'd mention it quickly because they're using it in carrots and onions in the Netherlands. It's called the Oddbot. It's very similar to the Nexus with those mechanical arms that just come down and pick the weeds. I don't know if there's interest. It might be a cool one to get over here and start testing as well. Another one, which you might see this season, this is kind of a pre-production picture, but David Tao is here. They have this electric weeder. So this one, again, similar, has arms that'll come down with an effector that will put electricity through the weeds, zap them. And I'm really excited to see how that works this coming season. Similarly, like Wendy mentioned, there's Carbon Robotics with their laser weeder. Straightforward enough. They shoot a laser to try to kill the weeds. They also have a new system that's a bit more modular. Before, it was some crazy price to buy that giant one. Now, if you want, you can just buy, say, like a 4-unit one to just do one bed at a time. And I think just this week, like Wendy mentioned, being out there driving these things 24/7, they'd have like 4 operators rotating. It can be a bit of a hassle. So now they have their auto tractor system where you can set up your tractor to be fully autonomous, and they'll just monitor it for you. It's got 360 cameras, radar, physical detection, all that stuff. I thought this might be a good time to mention too. I'm actually going to be working for Carbon Robotics starting on Sunday. I'm heading out this weekend to New York, and I'll actually be working on onions and muck soil to start. So hopefully it'll be interesting to see how that works there. I'm still planning to be around the station around 1 day a week, so I'll have my email. But yeah, it'll be an exciting opportunity. And yeah, with that, I just want to thank everyone here. Thank you to the AgriBox Working Group, Haggerty AgriBox, the robots, Piketa for their funding, Agri-Food Innovation Alliance, and all the growers who've helped cooperate on these products. Really means a lot. And just want to thank you all again for listening and open up the floor to any questions, comments, or ideas. Thank you.
Is it on? Yeah, you guys tried that sprayer. You demonstrated it last fall. Do you have any results or pictures that we could see?
We don't have any actual results from it. We do have some pictures that I could probably find for you. I don't know, would you agree, Kevin? It looked pretty good from what we saw. But we would like to work with them again this coming year to do a bit more of a formal trial and get some actual numbers we would feel comfortable sharing. But yeah, we just did a very small test. But yeah, it looked pretty promising actually.
Anyone else? Last chance? Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you.
Best of luck on your next adventure as well. Okay, next up, we have a minor use update from the Provincial Minor Use Coordinator. So welcome, Josh Mosiondz, if you have not met him before.
Okay, good morning. Can everyone hear me well? You back? Good enough. So my name is Josh Mosiondz. I work as the Provincial Minor Use Coordinator with the Ministry of Agriculture based out of Guelph there. Today, I'm just going to give a quick update on some of the minor use activities in 2024, some recent vegetable registrations we saw come through last year. We'll run through emergency use registrations, go through what the recent selections were at the priority setting workshops last year, talk about chlorothalonil just briefly. We don't have much to share at this point yet, but we've been talking about this last couple of years. Run through tank mixing updates, some ongoing minor use issues, and we'll take any questions at the end. So currently right now, the minor use program has about 525 active meal projects at various stages. That could include being in the research and data generation phase, the reporting stage, or under active scientific review at the Pest Management Regulatory Agency. Of that, just under 30% of those are linked to field vegetables. So there's quite a bit of work underway right now for this sector. With respect to 2024, we did see quite a bit of different registrations come through last year. I won't list through all of them, but some of the ones notable for the group here are probably going to be the table beat one for Cercospora with Provia Top. We saw Coragen Max come through just a couple weeks ago for use on 307A bulb vegetables. So that does include dry bulb onion and garlic. We have Frontier Max that came through on dry bulb shallots as well as Brussels sprouts for labeled weeds, and a couple others that came through on malathion for various lygus bug uses. Similarly, Organic finally made its way through the system. I know a lot of the organic growers were waiting upon this one, so we did see some uses come through in carrots as well as onions. Switch came through last year on crop group 513, as well as 413 brassica leafy vegetables and head and stem vegetables. So we had an emergency use in place for this for a couple of years for alternary management. So it was great to see that one come through. And similarly, we did see a cypermethrin registration come through on brassicas for tarnished plant bug, as well as carrots for aster leafhopper and our garden beets and daikon radish for flea beetles. With respect to emergency uses, there's still quite a bit of work going on in this area again. There's about 6 or 7 emergency uses underway right now for reference. So this value here of 8 expected submissions has since increased. So there's quite a bit here for vegetables, including Captan on-field peppers. We've had this in place for a couple of years now for management of anthracnose. The emergency uses for Symegra on cabbage maggot on both rutabaga and 513 brassicas is currently underway for review, as well as success on rutabaga, again for cabbage maggot. We are trying a second attempt at getting another product for beets this year for weed management, since we don't have access to Betamix. This will be a pre-emerge application of command. So it's currently in front of PMRA right now. There will be phyto damage seen if you make applications on this. So please use that cautiously if it's accepted. We'll hopefully have a little bit more information on that in another 3 or 4 weeks, I'm hoping at the latest. So keep an eye on the Ontario Vegetables blog and we'll get some information out there if that one's accepted. On the fruit side, we do have a lot of work going on greenhouse grown strawberries, as well as field strawberries for Neopestulopsis, as well as powdery mildew. And on the ornamental side, we have been working on a deltamethrin emergency use. So this is what's underway right now. We'll see what else comes through the next couple of weeks as we get closer to field season. The priority setting workshop. So there is a few in the room that just got back from this meeting last week up in Gatineau, Quebec. This is the annual priority setting workshop where we're setting research priorities for the Pest Management Center to hopefully lead to new minor uses down the road. They took place last Tuesday and Wednesday, And overall, we had 39 projects go forward for capacity considerations. So of the 39 projects raised, we'll probably see 21 to 23 projects selected as final research projects. Those which aren't actually selected will go to a reserve list and could be picked up in September, either through a sole project through the PMC or as a joint with the IR4 program, which is our American counterparts. With respect to the projects themselves, what I tried to do is bold the vegetable related ones. So Quebec did put through an onion mag, or this should be seed corn maggot, excuse me, but a spinosad seed treatment here. So that would be very relevant to the growers in the room, but we also saw some projects go forward on peaches, quinoas, hazelnuts, and low bush blueberries on a variety of different pests. And for the organic priorities, we did see a project go forward for celery with Pyganic, and that's just to fill out that label for organic growers. With respect to entomology, there's certainly some projects that might be relevant here. Radish and rutabaga for foliar applications of broflanlide or Sumagra. This tailors our emergency use that has gone on the last couple of years for management of this pest. And with rutabaga, we'll be deferring the residue to be done on carrots to complete the sub crop group. So crop group 1B, our hope is to maybe see that labeled for carrot weevil someday down the road. Similarly, mustard greens was put forward for considerations with cypermethrin, and that would be for management of tarnished plant bug. There's a few other projects further down here. I won't read those ones out, but asparagus is our last vegetable that went forward under the entomology section. And again, we're looking at foliar applications of broflanlide on that one as well. Overall, Ontario did well. 32 out of the 39 projects will support priorities put forward by our growers last year. So we had a very good year with respect to representation of our needs. For pathology, again, we did have a project go forward on rutabaga for downy mildew. The idea with this one is to use Captan and complement the project put forward on carrots a couple years ago, again, for the sub crop group 1B. Floral pick oximate or Adavelt was also put forward on cabbage for consideration. This would complement the broccoli submission put forward in 2019 and hopefully get us the crop group if that's picked up. So we'll keep an eye on that and try and push our way through to hopefully see that go forward for data generation. Lastly, for weeds, green onion saw a project put forward for Lontrell. Again, that will complement the use on dry bulb onion. And leaf and head lettuce saw some projects elevated for broad strike for broadleaf weeds. So again, overall, I think vegetables fared very well this year. We'll see what happens with capacity analysis. And in another month and a half or so, we should see the results come through. With the federal election going on, PMC is expecting the final results will be delayed just a little bit because they can't do consultations or release major publications and whatnot right now. So keep an eye on the Ontario Vegetable blog or the Grower if you subscribe with that. And there should be an article put out on both of those once that's available with the final A's selected this year. Finally, APWS came back. So for those of you who have attended the workshop in the past, APWS is A Priorities Without Solution. Essentially, these are screening projects that the PMC will undertake themselves. The goal this year was to see 2 projects elevated per discipline. Ultimately, we only put 3 forward for consideration. So the idea would be that one of these projects here will have a year of screening done with various active ingredients put forward for consideration, and that will eventually hopefully find something that works and go forward as a full use down the road. So overall, this is a lengthy process. The projects selected this year, if they need both tolerance and efficacy, in addition to residue, are probably 6 to 7 years away. But nonetheless, it does lead to a lot of the critical products we rely on day in and day out through the growing season. So it's a slow process, but it's very beneficial for us in the long run as it gets us those uses that otherwise wouldn't come to product labels. Chlorothalonil, again, there's not a whole lot that's changed since last year when we talked about this at this conference. The latest is we're maybe going to see an update come May or June. Originally, PMRA's work plan stated March as being an update month for it, but nothing came through last month. And again, with the federal election, I don't expect we'll be seeing anything come through anytime during this period. So We don't know what the outcome is here at this point. It was proposed for total phase out of outdoor and food uses, but keep an eye out again on the grower, on the blog, and on the PMRA website, maybe around May or June, maybe midsummer, and hopefully we'll see some information come through on that one. Tank mixing. So we've talked about this at this conference in the past, and I'm sure at some of the other grower meetings as well recently, but basically, a couple of years ago, PMRA decided to reverse their decision on tank mixing, and in a nutshell, both products you use to tank mix must permit tank mixing on both labels. We were expecting the policy to be in place by December of last year, but the PMRA did announce they're extending this period for another year to allow them to catch up with some of the label changes and updates. So it's business as usual for this year, like you've been doing the last couple of years, but when you're purchasing products for next season now, the recommendation is to just make sure you're reading those labels come winter 25, 26 to make sure anything you plan to tank mix does allow for tank mixing to be done. The good news is registrants have been generally using that general tank mix statement, so nothing really changed with respect to that. Those which didn't play nice before and gummed up the spur before will probably have a statement that says do not tank mix, but for those that we would typically tank mix before, most situations are allowing for tank mixing to be done. So the latest date is December 24th. I believe it's December 22nd is when the policy takes place. So if they're not updated by then, they will be considered to be silent and can't be tank mixed. But overall, you're going to be looking for either the general tank mixing statement, a selective or limiting statement that states what you can or cannot mix the product with, or do not tank mix at all. There's a couple of scenarios here. This is taken right from the policy itself that the PMRA has online. So if both products say nothing, they're considered silent, do not tank mix. If one allows it with a general tank mixing statement, but one says nothing or do not, you cannot tank mix. If they both carry that general statement, you're good to go. So take a look through that policy and that'll give you a better idea of what those scenarios look like. But again, the good news is we haven't really seen any surprises here or situations where companies have not supported that general tank mixing statement where it would be appropriate to do so. Some of the current issues we're going through with the minor use program right now is the impact of numerous reevaluations the last, honestly, 5, 10 years, 15 years. There's a lot of products we've lost the last little while that we're still kind of looking for new solutions with. And there is new reevaluations that come out every year. So dealing with the impacts, finding new solutions, and then dealing with that research lag to get those solutions in place is catching up. And I think that's, largely driving why we're seeing a large number of emergency uses the last couple of years. Similarly, there's the project capacity issues at Ag Canada and the Pest Management Center. That's how we get new residue data generated if the companies won't develop it and we don't have access, and losing access to generate new projects is catching up with us as well. There's the impact of invasive species. Spotted lanternfly is a big one. It's not here yet, but we've been doing a lot of planning at the ministry and at the national level for this pest and trying to get ready to ensure we have labels in place for that. Resistance management issues, and we're all well versed on that, whether it's fungicides, insecticides, or herbicides. Trying to find new modes of actions is really hard. And when we're dealing with carrots, for example, where there's not a lot of solutions, but lots of different herbicide needs and weeds, it creates quite the challenge to find new technology. Similarly, there's the cost of new products, the cost of new product development, and even the availability of these. There's just not a lot of new tools coming down that pipeline. So preserving what we have is pretty important. And there's been a lot of work on policy development to allow for pesticide use in the vertical farming industry. So there's lots underway at the national and provincial level and various different sectors. So there's constantly pulls coming from every which direction. One of the things I like to leave this meeting with is always how you can help contribute to the program itself. And one of our biggest asks is participating in the consultation meetings we do each fall. It gives us a good idea of what the challenges were this season, what your needs are, and it gives us the ammunition we need to go to Ottawa like we did last week to get those new tools and research projects in place. So it's usually only an hour or so per discipline. We do an onion program, we do a carrot program each fall. If you can take some time of your day, we're available in the fall to join those. We really value that input. But We also mentioned ensure your interests and organizations are represented at these meetings. We're fortunate with Matt joining us with the co-op, but it's always good to have grower reps there and present. So if you have interest in joining next year, please reach out to myself or Matt, and we can make sure we get you on the list to get up there. And when requested, we always ask that you help us out with providing detailed and accurate responses for data. Survey fatigue is a thing. I know it's challenging. The timelines aren't always great, but the data often gives us the tools we need to either push back on consultations or proposals for reevaluations, for example, for special reviews and pesticide use surveys and whatnot. So if you're tapped on the shoulder and asked to help out a bit, if you can, we always appreciate that. So thank you in advance for any requests that might come through. Similarly, where research collaborations are possible, and if you have the means to do so, they're always valuable. They can help us get provincial data sets for label expansions down the road. If you see new or invasive pests, or if you suspect failure of some of your tools, try and report those where you can. It helps us get ahead of the curve and hopefully kind of either contain whatever the issue is or help deal with management and finding strategies for dealing with resistance, for example. And finally is think outside the box and practice good IPM projects or strategies rather. Protecting our existing tools is really important, as we kind of mentioned, as we're mostly aware we don't have a lot of new tools coming down. So keep doing what you're doing and incorporating your biological and cultural practices into your programs. And the more we can save the effectiveness of our tools now, the better we'll be in the long run. So I'll stop there. My contact information is here. Reach out anytime if you have questions. And I think we have a little bit of time here if there's questions from the floor right now as well. So thank you.
Questions for Josh? Products, yeah.
Josh, with the tank mix issue, how is anyone going to tell if they go back that you've tank mixed if it's not on the label that you shouldn't have done that? Like,
the biggest risk here is if there's a compliance audit that's done or Canada Gap, they might be looking and going through with a fine tooth comb to see what your spray records are looking like. It is considered a violation of their policy, so you could get nailed on that. Generally speaking, with compliance, it'll come down to an education or enforcement letter, but technically there is policy in place that could allow for fines. So it's in your best interest to still abide by that and keep an eye.
But it's by the record keeping that they would
typically,
that
yes.
you've done
Yeah.
A and B together when you should have done that.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Last chance. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have our second industry update, and that's with FMC, and that's going to be Sylvain Legault, and he'll be joining us virtually. So we'll get that set up, and he will talk to us over Zoom.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Sylvain Legault. I'm sad and sorry that I couldn't be there in person, but I'm happy to be able to share the FMC portfolio update today virtually. Thanks for making this possible to the team. So our hort portfolio is no different than was in the previous seasons. I had prepared a couple of updates, and a couple of them were already covered by Josh, so it's very fitting that I'm speaking behind him. So half of the job is already done. So one of the quick announcements that I have is product that you may or may not be familiar with. It's an older insecticide. Saigon is now moving to a new formulation. So we've had Saigon 480 in the marketplace for ages. And now we're going to be moving to a new formulation, which will be a 400 EC. The reason for the change is a couple reasons. One, this new formulation will be more stable, easier to handle, and will have a longer shelf life. And we've also re-added the turf and ornamental crops that we lost in translation through the years on the Saigon 480. So a long story that I'll spare you for today. Next update that has already been touched on is the emergency submission. So at this point, it is not an emergency registration, but it's product that has been submitted for emergency use on Garden Beats, which is Command 360. I have one slide on this that I'll discuss furthermore. And last but not least is that new label edition that we've had with Coragen Max. It is now registered for use on crop group 307, which is the crop group that includes onions and the whole entire group for control of Lepidoptera species. So any kind of worms, really. If you are familiar with Coragen, you know what it can do for you. So we are now registered for use on onions. All right, so the Clomazone or Command 360 emergency registration project, I'm going to leave it at that for now. So this is, as Josh mentioned, it's in the hands of PMRA, and we have not received the green light. So I'm presenting this to you today because today is the meeting, but this is not a foregone conclusion at this point. So it could be declined, it could be accepted and move forward. So basically, if you are familiar with Command, Command is registered for use on some other hort crops, mainly the cucurbits group. So registered for cucumbers, used on pumpkins and squash and that entire group. So it's the same product. It controls grasses and broadleaf weeds. On the emergency registration that we submitted for garden beets, we will see barnyard grass, velvet leaf, lamb's quarters, and red root pigweed. Those are the only 4 labels that will appear on this emergency registration label if it gets granted. And we also have one rate, or will have one rate, and it's 0.78 liters per hectare, which is the lowest registered rate on cucurbits. So it's a product that will give you, the potential for your garden beets to emerge weed-free, and then it will be part of, a strategy including some post-emerge products. The application of Command at those rates won't take you to the promised land. It won't get you to the finish line for garden beets, but it will help you get your crop to a good start, weed-free good start. And then, you'll incorporate your post-emerge application of herbicides that you have. One of them is a beet that is part of our portfolio as well. Command is extremely compatible for tank mixes. Based on what was just shared, is business as usual as far as tank mixing, as long as both products are registered on the crop. At those rates, it will give us recropping flexibility. And Command or Clomazone is one of those products that will perform well. Any pre-emerge herbicide will need a minimum of humidity, precipitation to get activated. Command is one of those that is not as dependent on waterfall, so it will perform on a wide variety of conditions. Once you have it applied on the ground, the strategy is to not disturb the soil after you've applied it. So you need to spray your Command. If you're going to cultivate first, and then you need to apply the Command pre-emerge of the crop. Otherwise, if you hit the crop with the Command, you will for sure see some damage. And as Josh mentioned, there's potential for a little bit of crop phyto with Command on garden beets. What you would see is mostly like whitening, which is mostly cosmetic rather than true damage that will hinder the yield. but you might see some whitening of the crop, but they will grow out of it, as the conditions improve. You might see this if you get like heavy rainfall after the application of command, after the crop has emerged, obviously, and or under high stress, either drought or any kind of stress that the crop will go through. Then it won't be as able to metabolize the herbicides. So I will finish this slide by saying that this has not been approved by PMRA yet. So keep it in the back of your mind, and it may get approved. There's very few tools for garden beet growers. So I have high confidence that we'll move forward with this one, but at this point it hasn't received registration. Next that I touched on quickly was the Saigon 400 EC. So it's a new formulation of Saigon, but it's the same product, basically. Same label, same crops, only the rates will be different if you've been using Saigon over the years. Sorry. You will have to adjust your rate because the concentration of the product is different. And as I mentioned, we've re-added turf and ornamental crops that we had lost in translation over the years. So broader label, but as far as fruit and vegetable crops, it's the same pest, the same application. We haven't lost anything in this new submission for that new formulation. All right, last is a quick announcement on what has been going on with FMC. Last year in June, so it would have been after this meeting last year, we officially struck a deal for distribution of the portfolio from a company called Novonesis. And FMC Canada is now the official distributor of Novonesis products. What this means for us is that we have a few products now that are part of our portfolio, and we've also built an entire biologicals divisions team that will support those products. It is mainly inoculants for broadacre crops. So some of those brands you may be familiar with or may not be familiar with, depending on what other crops you grow at home. But the other fun thing for vegetable and fruit growers is that part of that portfolio, there's a couple of products one called Torque IF for in-furrow and Ratchet. It's the same active ingredients. Those are biostimulants that are part of the Novonesis portfolio that we will now be distributing in Canada. These two products, whether you apply Torque in-furrow or Ratchet post-emerge, will be they're biostimulants, so they'll be enhancing key metabolic pathways. They will basically give a kick in the behind of the crop and will help the crop be more efficient at drawing nutrients and at sustaining drought events or stress events. So the one product I believe that will have a better fit, and I'm not excluding Torque, but I'm only going to talk about Ratchet today, is Ratchet. So this product is foliar applied, so it's a post-emerge application, and with the application of Ratchet, you will see increased photosynthesis, increased carbohydrate synthesis, stress mitigation, as I mentioned earlier, early and increased flowering on some crops. We've seen some trials done on peppers and tomatoes that were looking extremely promising. Increased grain and fruit yield, again, depending on the crop. But also at the root level, so a foliar application of Ratchet will also help the development of your crop roots. So lateral root development, increase root biomass, increase mycorrhizal association, and increase water and nutrient uptake. So pretty fun thing. What we've obviously what the company has focused on prior to giving us the distribution has been the broadacre crops, as may not come as any surprise. But this product will have definitely a fit in some hort crops. So as this slide is just to demonstrate that, you know, a full year application will trigger a response at the root level. So you don't necessarily have to have torque as part of your rotation in order to have efficacy or crop response at the root level. The ratchet will give you that as well. And registered crop. So this product was approved by CFIA at late winter. The label is not even officially out yet, but it was approved by CFIA and these are the crops that we will have on the first label. So pretty broad. The ones that I listed in bold are the ones that may be of interest for the group here. So root and tuber vegetables, group 1 and 2, which includes carrots and all the root vegetables. And fruiting vegetable, as I mentioned, peppers, tomatoes. I know that some growers do grow those crops in your area. And a long list of other crops, including all the broadacre crops, canola, corn, soybean, cereals, but also potatoes as part of the group 1 root and tuber vegetable. So for this year, we will be running some demos. So it is not our commercial launch in 25. The commercial launch for this product will be in 2026. And we're looking forward to it. We're going to be ratchet. Basically, how to use it is target mid-vegetative stage. You can tank mix it with pretty much anything. This slide was tailored for broadacre crops, but it can be tank mixed with a herbicide, a fungicide, an insecticide application. So you don't need to do an extra pass over your field. You can do all in one shot with one higher rate. You can split your rate by 14 days between the two application if you're going over your field, you know, in a timely fashion. That's something that can be incorporated in your product rotation pretty easily. And ratchet is not a live organism, so it can be tank mixed with anything, and it also has a long shelf life. Just quickly, one last slide here just to share some results that we've seen on soybeans and corn. Obviously, what we want to do this year is build our knowledge of this, the potential of this product with hort crops as well. But in corn and soybean, when it's all said and done, based on, you know, current prices, it's you know, a gain of around $50 per hectare on your investment. So something that has been demonstrated on multiple trials over the years. In soybeans, with corn, we've seen even better results with torque, but the ratchet has also shown some positive results, and 80% of the time. And that, in a nutshell, that's what I had new for FMC in 2025 and moving forward. So if you have any questions, your local rep is Dennis Rodet, and my contact info is also there on the board. If you want to give me a shout, always happy to answer your question to the best of my ability. And that's all I had. Any question, be happy to answer.
Thanks, Sylvain. Can you hear me?
Yep.
As we get Kevin's up, the question about the command beet use, how much experience do you have with it? Like, the bleaching won't be a problem on topped beets, but do you have a sense of if you could use it on bunch beets at all?
So my personal experience is limited. I'm not gonna lie, but I've seen and talked with Pierre Lafontaine in Quebec, who has run most of those trials with his business CIEL. And those were his comments that I was basically just passing on, that it is very cosmetic what you will see, and doesn't matter what kind of beets really. You can use it on any variety, and the bleaching will not happen all the time. And that's why the 0.78 rate is the one that we're targeting. They've tried some higher rates, but at the higher rates, you were seeing the bleaching more often. So based on those results, they scaled back to the 0.78 liters per hectare. But the beets were pulling through the higher rates, but the damage was a bit too much sustained.
Sounds good. I do have a question. Yeah, Greg. Cropping restrictions, Sylvain? Cropping restrictions with carrots or onions? Any issues there? Rotational?
No, it won't be mentioned on the label, but based on my experiences, because we used Command for many years on different crops, including cucurbits, and I don't see that as being an issue.
Any experience with muck soil and rotations that you know of?
That muck soil, if anything, it will bind the product. It will be less of an issue.
Okay, I think that's everything here. Thank you, Sylvain.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, and have a great season. Like, it's snowing right now, so we're not there yet, but spring is coming. Have a good one.
Okay, well, welcome Kevin from the station here to talk about our carrot research update.
I don't know why I made the program and I put myself before lunch. That's a bad place to put yourself. Rookie mistake, but anyway. There's no food yet anyways, so I'm going to give an update on our carrot research, focusing on cavity spot screening we've done in a Pythium fungicide trial. So we've looked at cavity spot for years. What makes or what promotes cavity spot? We have susceptible cultivars. Most of the orange carrots have some susceptibility to cavity spot, but they do vary. Purple carrots are resistant, and if anyone's grown red carrots, they're usually very susceptible. One of the biggest factors is soil moisture. It's a water mold, and high soil moisture increases the risk of disease. And heavy rains, especially in August and September, can really impact the disease risk for this season. Poor drainage as well, and then cooler temperatures. And if you look at this, these are not things that we've had the last few falls. It's been definitely warmer and definitely drier in the past several years. So we've been doing cavity spot work for many years, working with Phil Simon from the USDA to look at breeding carrots for resistance, and then comparing these to atomic red susceptible, a whole bunch of yellow carrots, and a bunch of cut and peel carrots. Why would we be looking at cut and peel carrots? The California Carrot and Onion or Carrot Board has provided the funding for the past 20+ years to do this research. And the long-term goal is to contribute to the USDA breeding program to improve the genetic makeup of the carrots to get some cavity spot resistance bred into the carrots. And we're also assessing leaf blight and forking and bolting, just looking at those other parameters as well. Quickly going into the methods. So we obviously seed our carrots. We looked at 65 lines, direct seeded, usually do it in early June. And we have a 20-meter or a 20-foot row, and we don't apply any fungicides, and then just grow the carrots as we normally would. So as I said, we're looking at Cercospora and Alternaria, and then we're also looking at forking at harvest, which is also caused by Pythium. In the fall, we're harvesting 50 carrots basically in late October, and then assessing them hopefully before Christmas. And then as we harvest them, we're also assessing the carrots for forking and getting a general idea of how much forking has occurred through the year. We wash the carrots and then assess them based on the size of the lesion from 1 millimeter to up to 5 millimeters in length. And as you can see here, here's sort of like the past 5 years. Our incidence varies, usually have high incidence up to 90%. In 2024, our average was less than 50, and we had a low DSI. So the DSI is the severity. So a higher DSI means we had more larger lesions on all the carrots. A lower number is obviously smaller lesions. And years ago, we used to have quite a few carrots that bolted, but now the genetics have improved and we have very few bolting from year to year. Our leaf blight also varies, but last year was low to moderate, and our forking was relatively low as well. Going into the data here, looking at the disease severity, so we look at the differences. Purple carrot, deep purple, obviously very resistant, no disease. You can see here lots of different numbers, but you see some of the numbers are also repeating. So those are ones that are bred. They have the same parents. So we have a whole group here that's relatively resistant to cavity spot. Very small lesions. Most people would look at them and say, well, these are perfectly healthy. A few years ago, I realized I need glasses from looking at carrots because I started looking at them and I couldn't see anything. So I guess I'm getting older. We've also noticed some cultivars. We have Brilliance, relatively resistant. We also have Envy. We usually use that as our susceptible check. Last year, it was a little bit worse, but not as bad as we've seen in other years. And as you can see, even in low years, Atomic Red still shows up as susceptible. But there's also susceptible orange as well that we have. So we do have a good range of different diseases, or of different severity of cavity spot. And then this is 2023. Again, if you look at the numbers, I'll show you in another graph, but we have very consistent results from year to year. But you can see in 2025 or 2023, we had double the amount of severity that we did from 2024. And this is just what they look like. So here's our healthy, and then the different categories that we rate them into. The purple, here's one of the resistance. So some of these here, they're different. Yeah, the different crosses are listed. So out of the 50 carrots, we only have a couple that have any disease that we could find. And then this is Brilliance. So it is relatively new to the market, but it does have some fairly decent cavity spot resistance. Looking at the forking and leaf blight, this is sort of you can see here we have the same numbers, the same parents. They repeat, and they're all relatively low. And as you can see, this is a theme. We have the same numbers from year to year. A summary: we had low disease relative to prior years. Many orange lines had low cavity spot. The parents with F7737 and F738 show good resistance. And these varieties are the ones that have been used as parents to release parents to seed companies to use to breed carrots with resistance to cavity spot. And you can see the Atomic Red and other orange carrots are still resistant as well. So quickly then going on to our carrot Pythium trial. Again, we're looking at forking and cavity spot. We've tried a whole bunch of different calcium products. This year, we tried a product called Wollastonite. It was spread at 7 tons a hectare. I thought I changed that this morning, but obviously not. And then we applied some foliar treatments of Fostrol later in the season, and then looked at forking and in yield as well. So Wollastonite is a calcium silicate soil amendment that they're basically mining. It's an alternative to lime. And the thing about Wollastonite is it captures CO2 as an inorganic carbon. And because of this, they can give it free to farmers because they qualify for carbon tax rebates. So the product itself is free, and all you do is pay for trucking. And it's produced out sort of north of Kingston out that way. But it is it's a 18% calcium, 4% manganese, and the silicon I thought is here as well. I can't see that right now. Anyway, but it is an alternative product to 26% silicon, 18% calcium, and they believe the silicon might also have some effect on plant defense mechanisms. So we spread this prior to seeding, and then incorporate it into the soil and then seed it over top. So we didn't have, here's our marketable yield. no real difference, no significant difference between any of the treatments. And then for Pythium or fork carrots, again, no real differences and relatively low amounts. Our carrots didn't store very well, and we didn't end up looking at cavity spot for these because they were in pretty rough shape. So I don't have any cavity spot data, but we're not sure if we're going to look at this again. But it is an alternative calcium product that has potential to be looked at in the future. So here, no difference in cavity spot because we didn't look at it. Yeah, applying the wollastonite did not really show any reduction in forking. Just to summarize, all our research is available in our green book, which is out front, and it's also available on our website that you can search up here. So I'd like to thank our funding from the California Fresh Carrot Advisory Board, the Ontario Agri-Food Innovation Alliance, the Bradford Co-op, and the Fresh Vegetable Growers of Ontario, and also our summer crew that helped do all the work that we did this summer.
Kevin, questions? Any questions for Kevin? Anyone? No, everyone wants to go to lunch. I will grab the box for the door prizes.
So now I want to mention too, if you look at our sign up front, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Alliance AgriTurf, BASF, Bayer Crop Science, Corteva, FMC, FS Partners, Seedway, Homes Agro, Stoke Seeds, UAP, and Syngenta for helping to supply the lunch that we're having today, and also for the door prizes that we have. So if you see them today, thank them, because the reason why we can host this and not charge you anything is from our valued sponsors.
We'll start up the afternoon presentation with Umbrin, who's a PhD student under Mary Ruth, working on cavity spot on carrots. So take it away, Umbrin.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Dennis, for this introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. My apologies for not joining the conference in person, but I'm glad that I can join it online. Today, I will share the key findings with you of my research over the past 4 years, focusing on integrated approaches for cavity spot management and risk assessment for the carrot growers. Cavity spot, as you all know, is a common disease in the Holland marsh, appearing as lesions on the carrots. The disease is unusual as it caused by several Pythium species. Frequently, these 6 species are associated with disease. The composition of disease-causing species changes with the location, and it is important to identify which specific species are currently causing disease in the Holland marsh, because the disease control with fungicide, that's Ridomil, depend upon which species is causing this disease right now. For example, the species Pythium sulcatum, which is the pathogen, is relatively less sensitive to fungicide Ridomil as compared to Pythium voile. So if Pythium sulcatum is causing disease in the Holland marsh, then the Ridomil will be less effective. However, if Pythium voile is the main species causing the disease in the Holland marsh, then Ridomil will be relatively more effective. That's why it's very important to know that actually which species are causing disease currently. Disease management practices, again, you all know, are very limited for cavity spot. These include avoiding fields which have history of cavity spot, long crop rotation, about 3 to 6 years, which is not economically practical, especially an area like Holland marsh, which usually have onion and carrots in rotation. All commercial carrot cultivars available in the market are susceptible, but susceptibility varies. Only 3 fungicides are registered in Ontario to manage cavity spot, out of which only 1 is relatively effective. But repeated use of this one fungicide, Ridomil, can lead to fungicide resistance in population and disease control failure. With all this background, the objective of this study are to confirm the relative susceptibility of carrot cultivars to the disease, to identify which species are causing cavity spot lesions in Holland marsh, and to screen the pathogen for resistance to fungicide, specifically Redomil. The first objective, the relative susceptibility of carrot cultivar to cavity spot, is an ongoing long-term project at the Muck station. As Kevin talked about this before the lunch break, my part was to conduct 3 years field trials to confirm the categorization of carrot cultivars, which were made based on previous field trials from 2015 to 2019. The following carrot cultivars were categorized into 3 categories: resistant, which is usually the purple colored carrots, purple haze and deep purple; moderately susceptible, usually the orange colored carrot cultivars, sallow bunch, Nairobi, uppercut and femore; and highly susceptible, red colored carrot cultivar, atomic red and red scent, and also 2 orange colored carrot cultivars, envy and triton. 3 years of my research showing the same trend as shown by the previous field trials. Deep purple was resistant one and no disease was found on it. Among moderately susceptible carrot cultivars are all orange colored carrot cultivars which were tested in this study. Sallow bunch was the one with the least susceptibility to cavity spot. As expected, atomic red, envy, and red sun were the most susceptible, and these cultivars should be avoided in the fields which are having high risk of cavity spot. There are many other carrot cultivars which are available in the market. However, I assess few selected one. There are other carrot cultivars which are assessed in other field trials at the Holland Marsh, and their information is in Green Book report. The second part of the study is to identify actually which species are causing cavity spot in Holland Marsh. For this, 1,200 Pythium isolate, which is the pathogen, were isolated from the cavity spot tissues, which are collected from 18 different fields across the Holland Marsh. And 7 species are causing disease over there. Pythium sulcatum is the most abundant one. Almost 80% of isolates are Pythium sulcatum, and it was found from all fields, followed by Pythium violet. So Pythium sulcatum is the abundant one, and this is not a very good news because this is least sensitive to Redomil based on previous studies. Now, next part is to screen Pythium isolate for their resistance to fungicide. Severe cavity spot has been reported from the fields despite applying fungicide Redomil. So it is important to confirm that this disease control failure, even applying by fungicide in the field, is due to resistance development in the pathogen or some other cause. For this, 188 Pythium isolates belonging to 7 species were screened for their sensitivity to fungicide Redomil. Either these isolates were previously exposed to Redomil or not. And the result shows that that's an unexpected result. All isolates were sensitive. But Pythium sulcatum among all species were least sensitive to Redomil, which is the expected one. So the possible disease control failure in the Holland Marsh could be microbial degradation of this fungicide in the soil, or maybe the abundance of a species that's Pythium sulcatum and which is least sensitive to Redomil. The second part of the study is focused on developing a risk prediction model. So the risk of this disease can be predicted in the field before seeding carrots based on a soil test, which relate the soil properties and microbial communities, including fungi, bacteria, and Pythium, that the pathogen in the soil with the disease risk. So the high risk fields can be avoided. For this, the fields will be selected in the Holland Marsh, and all those fields which have previously reported cavity spot in their field were selected with the help of local IPM team at the Muck station. All those fields which are included in this study have Muck soil. So the results I'm presenting over there is directly related to Muck soil growers growing carrots over there. And those soils have onion carrot in rotation. A few have applied fungicide Ridomil. The cultivars were usually orange colored carrot cultivars. None of the field have applied fumigation or biofumigation at the start of seeding. The soil was sampled before seeding carrot in late May with the soil sampler. And then the soil was sent to specific labs to know their soil nutrient properties and soil microbial communities in it. Then the carrots were harvested from the same field in late September, and the disease cavity spot was assessed on these carrots. Here come the results, and results are very interesting, that all those fields which has low disease severity or low risk fields had higher pH, higher calcium base saturation, higher cation exchange capacity, and lower copper and lower iron as compared to high-risk field. And there was no effect of other soil nutrients. Here, high pH and calcium in the soil related to low disease, it's indicate a possibility that using calcium-based soil amendments can reduce the disease. It's hard to say or recommend anything based on this data, but this is indicating a possibility. And the field trials are going on at the Muck station to investigate the effect of calcium-based soil amendment on cavity spot, as Kevin talked about it, and so far no success about using these products in managing cavity spot, but the research is ongoing. As we hypothesized that the microorganisms, including the pathogen, they were different in low and high-risk soils. The high-risk soils have some more pythium as compared to low-risk soils. The high-risk soils are showing in the red color and low-risk over there in blue color. So there are more different kinds of pythium in high-risk soils as compared to low-risk soils. Similarly, there were different fungi and different bacteria in low and high-risk soils. In fungi, specifically Motorella, that taxa were more prevalent in low-risk soils. Fusarium and Penicillium were more common in high-risk soils. Similarly, some bacteria were more in low-risk soil as compared to high-risk soils. In conclusion, for cultivar susceptibility, purple haze and deep purple were resistant. Atomic red, red sun, and envy was very susceptible and should be avoided if the field has high risk of cavity spot. Cell bunch was moderately susceptible as compared to other tested cultivars, and it is a good choice or suitable choice for the growers in the Holland Marsh. Most abundant species is Pythium sulcatum, which is least sensitive to Ridomil. So Ridomil is going to be less effective in the muck soils. And there was so far no resistance in pathogen to Ridomil in the soils. More research is required to understand what actually happens in the muck soil, how long this product is staying in the soil, and what happens to pathogen when this is applied to get a clear answer why this product is not working and not controlling the disease. And for the disease prediction, yes, we can predict the disease based on data of 3 years, that if the soil has higher pH and having higher calcium, lower soil copper, lower iron, and more fungi, that's Motorella, it's mean that this is a low risk soil and disease will be lower as compared to high risk soils if pH is pH is low, calcium base saturation is low, about 66%, but it has higher copper, about 12 ppm cutoff, and high iron up to level of 210 ppm. more Pythium, which is a pathogen, more fungi as Fusarium and Penicillium. Here, I want to make a point that this is the data based on 3 years. We make a model and we are confident, but we need to validate this model. And for this, the research is ongoing and we want to sample more fields in the Holland Marsh to validate this disease prediction and to make better decisions. If you want to participate in this study and allow us to sample from the soil and your field so we can validate this disease prediction model, please give your name to Kevin or Tyler. We would like to have as many fields as we can for this year. With all of this, thank you so much for the staff at the Muck station, all the funding partners for providing the funds, and the growers, especially at the Holland Marsh, for allow us to sample soil and cats from their field and get a valuable data from this. All of this, I have printed the reports for the growers which participated in this study in last few years, and from where I sampled the soil and carrots. And these reports are printed having the data about cavity spot disease percentage in their field, the risk of cavity spot, which was assessed based on this model and a disease assessment, and also soil nutrient test of their field soil. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to come in person today. My apologies for this. However, these printed reports will be available at Muck Station starting tomorrow. Feel free to pick up a copy of there or contact Kevin or Tyler if you need assistance in locating them. Thank you so much. And any question, please.
Any questions for Umbrin? Yeah, got one here.
Were all these carrots harvested like late in the season, or did you harvest early carrots to look for cavity spot as well?
I harvest the carrots in late September, in the late season, and then assess cavity spot on them. The soils were sampled before seeding or at seeding, and the disease was assessed at the harvest to confirm that the fields we are predicting as low risk are low risk or not.
Anyone else? If not, I will go get my pizza. But as they keep beeping me. But not before I introduce, thank you, Umbrin. Not before I introduce Lori from the Lake Simcoe Conservation. Oh, they really want to get rid of this pizza. From the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority for her update. It's all yours, Lori.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here today. As I mentioned, my name is Lori McLean and I work for the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and I'm going to chat a little bit about the funding that we have available this year. So essentially, Lake Simcoe, what is a watershed? It's all the streams and rivers that flow towards Lake Simcoe that make the watershed. So it's not based on municipal boundaries, it's actually based on how the water flows. And knowing that this is something that's really important, some of the issues we have, I want to thank Tim for this lovely picture. A lot of the concerns that are happening are mainly, some of them due to the water flow and some of the flooding that occurs, but also some of the soil loss. So as the water is eroding over the soil, it's actually taking it into the water. Another issue also is wind erosion is another way that soil is lost on the fields. So the Conservation Authority, we do want to help. We do have grants available to help offset some of the costs, and we also offer free site visits. So to come out to the farm and to talk about some of the concerns that you have, and this again is no charge. So to apply for our grants, there is an application process. That's something that we can't get around. But the good news is I can help you with the application form. So I can help you fill out, answer the questions. You do apply first and it is approved by an internal, oh, more pizza, approved by a committee. And then you can proceed with the project and it is a reimbursement program. So just wanted to let you know that it is a reimbursement after the project's been done. So this is the full list of the categories that we have available. It's all listed on our website and I did leave some postcards just at the front if you wanted to grab for more information. And the ones at the top are mainly ag and focus, and the ones at the bottom are more natural heritage. So I am going to highlight some of the ones that we do have available. The first one being soil testing. So this is something that's available. You could do it annually. And just to making sure that the conditions are all up to date and that you've got the right information for your soil. And on its own, it's 50% up to $500. But if you do another project, it's actually 50% up to $1,000 per test. And that's can be something like pairing that with cover crops. So we do have funding again for cover crops to help prevent soil erosion and improve the soil health. And our funding is currently, it's 100% up to $2,000 and that's for the cost of seeds only, but you can apply twice per year. So if you have some spring cover crops and you have fall cover crops, you can apply twice. Examples being the spring barley and fall being something like an oilseed radish as an overwinter cover crop. And again, this is something I can help you with the process. So we have funding available for tile outlet control structures, and this can help increase some of that resiliency during the different fluctuating water on the fields. And it's 50% up to $2,000 per structure. And I know some farmers have participated in and have got some background information on these types of structures. So I'd be more than happy to help connect if it's something that you are interested in learning more about. And again, it's something that you can help control the water that's on the field. So if you need to close it to hold the water back or open to allow the water to drain off. We still have funding available for wash water treatment systems. So this is looking at helping to keep the soil on the fields and also closing the water loop for the vegetable processing facilities. So for de-dirting equipment, it's 50% up to $5,000 and 50% up to $20,000 for water reuse. And the de-dirting is the equipment that you can put on your harvester to help, again, knock off the excess soil. And it also can be the equipment that's placed at the beginning of the vegetable processing, at the vegetable processing process. And just an example of a water reuse. Planting trees and shrubs. We don't plant trees in the marsh, but we do look at planting shrubs along some of the banks. And this can be in some areas we are experiencing some soil erosion and losing some of the banks. We've also, with some of the other structures that have been in place, like tree stumps, we've been able to also plant in and around those too. And if you're ever thinking about doing it this year, we actually have 100% of the funding costs up to $15,000. So if there's any areas that you were thinking of trying it out, I would say this is the year to try it. I know they're really wanting to see some of these projects in the ground and again, just more trees and shrubs, but knowing that we only plant shrubs in the marsh. And last one I'm just going to highlight is controlling cropland erosion. So this can be wascobs, it can be drop terraces, drop structures, grass waterways, and looking at 50% up to $5,000 for those structures. And this can include any of the design work as well. So it's not just the structure itself. And with that, I want to say thank you. I do have, again, more postcards at the front. And with our programs, we're always wanting to, I want to say, hear back from farmers about what's working, what's not working, some more innovative projects if you've got ideas. And actually partnering with OMAFA. They've got some sessions coming up here in April of just wanting to talk with farmers about some of the barriers to implementing these programs and projects and, you know, sort of what's working, what's not working. So the closest one for here, I would say would be on April 22nd in Nisquillenbury. And there's also an online option. So I strongly encourage, if you're interested, just to provide that feedback because it's really valuable and it helps with these programs to make them more accessible and to have the benefit that we're all hoping for. So with that, again, thank you. And if there's any questions.
Thank you, Lori. Any questions? No, they're going to let you off the hook easy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And again, there's lots of farmers that have taken part, so I'd be happy to make those connections too. So thank you.
Thanks again. Next up, we have Dr. Mary Ruth McDonald, which you are all know and are familiar with, talking about some of the fertilizer rates for onions and carrots and some of the work done recently and discussion around that. So welcome, Mary Ruth.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, I'll be talking about some of the recent work that we've done on fertilizers, but also some of the work that was done over a decade ago. So that's why there's so many co-authors on this presentation, because there's been a lot of work in the past and there's work ongoing. So I'm going to be talking about some of the situations where fertilizer can be reduced or even omitted for a year. But I want to start out by saying that we know that plants need fertilizer and they need nutrients. And we've done a number of trials over the years on mineral soil. This one last year on muck soil, where we certainly do see lack of growth and other problems when we don't add fertilizer. But there are situations in the marsh where there's already enough nutrients in the soil. So I hope some of you are familiar with this new book from OMAFA. It's not the kind of thing that you read cover to cover, but there's lots of good information in it. It's a good reference. You can get the hard copy or it's available online as well. But you might not all be aware of this recommendation for carrots on muck soil. Work over the years has shown that if you're growing an onion carrot rotation, it's been established for a while, there's already enough nitrogen in the soil that the recommendation is no added nitrogen for those carrots. And why? This is work that was done way back in the 1920s, but people actually excavated, cut down in the soil, looked at where the carrot roots were. And carrots have a very, very deep root system. We did some of this work, or Sean Westerveld did probably 20 years ago, but this is 3 feet, 1 meter down, all those carrot roots. You go down 2 meters and there's still some roots, but carrots are very good at taking up nutrients from the soil. I sometimes think of them as a bit of a nutrient sponge. So not only do they have the roots up here, but we've done the research that has shown that they actually take up those nutrients from deep in the soil and use them for yield. And over the years, I've had different growers tell me that sometimes they get their best carrots the year after onions where they don't put on any fertilizer at all because there's enough fertilizer left over in the soil. But here's just a few numbers to show that. So this pointer's a bit dull, but here we have no nitrogen fertilizer. Half of the recommended rate, the 100 is a recommended rate. We went up to twice the recommended rate. Yields look pretty bad this year. I went back to our report and the carrots weren't seeded till the end of July. Not quite sure why that was, but we're still not seeing any improvement in yield with that additional nitrogen. And then the following year, very respectable yields for the carrots, but again, no benefit whatsoever with applying that different nitrogen to the carrots. So I hope that explains where that recommendation came from for no nitrogen on carrots on muck soils. But what about onions with nitrogen? So our recommendation right now, again out of this book, 90 kilograms pre-plant, side dress of 30, but it does say that you only need that side dress nitrogen if there's been heavy rain. So something that actually leached the nitrogen out of the soil. Otherwise, probably not necessary. And back to that same publication, we think of onions as having a shallow root system, but it's not as deep as carrots. But going down 2 feet, there's still a very extensive root system, and it extends more than that. And so again, when we look at yields, this is back 25 years, 2 years at least, the onions were seeded at the normal time. Again, no nitrogen recommended rate and double the recommended rate, and very little difference in yield. And 2001 seemed to be a very good year for yield, but definitely no advantage to adding nitrogen in those cases. So we're not the only ones who've been doing this work or making these observations. This is work from Brian Nault. You'll hear from Brian Nault online tomorrow morning. He's a researcher from New York State, where they grow a lot of onions on muck soils. And these are 3 different years, A, B, and C. They were looking at thrips in addition to nitrogen, but no nitrogen, half rate, and full rate. And if we look at those bars across the years, differences from year to year, but no real difference. In fact, sometimes the trend is slightly lower with nitrogen compared to no added nitrogen. And many of you probably know Christy Hoepting. She's spoken at this conference many times. This is an article out of Onion World because Christy did this work with Brian Nault. They did these nitrogen trials on farm, 11 farms, and they concluded that nitrogen rates could be reduced to 60 or 90. So 90, of course, is our pre-plant recommendation. They didn't find any differences when they tissue tested during the growing season. They also looked at thrips and bulb rot and didn't find any effect of nitrogen on those either. They looked at nitrate level in the soil, but they did find, as we just saw the previous slide, the biggest differences were from one year to the next. They saw differences in varieties, which is expected. And in general, they found that the later maturing varieties had the highest yield. And that's not too unusual either. But the really interesting point, Brian Nault concluded that the varieties that we grow today have better root systems. They're probably better at just taking up those nutrients from the soil, including nitrogen. And that's why we can look at adjusted nitrogen rates. These were set 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And the varieties were quite a bit different then. So the last nutrient I'm going to talk about is phosphorus on onions. And the phosphorus recommendations haven't changed much over the years either. On the right is one of the old recommendation books. On the left is in recommendations out of the new publication 839. If you look down here at the bottom, these are exactly the same. 51 to 60, there's a recommendation for some phosphorus fertilizer to be added 20 kilograms. But if you get over 61 parts per million, the recommendation is no added phosphorus. And these are MR, moderate response, LR is low response, RR rare and none. And in the olden days, we used to refer to these as very high phosphorus instead of no response, and or rare response. And that no response, we used to reverse it and say it was excessive phosphorus. So again, this is back about 15 years ago. We did a very extensive trial looking at different size plots, but I'm going to emphasize the large plot trials we did in growers' fields looking at phosphorus on onions. So we set off with the question of testing the OMAFRA recommendations to see if they were accurate for the amount of fertilizer required by onions with a focus on phosphorus. But what happened when we looked at the grower fields, we did find one with low levels of phosphorus, but a lot of them had high levels of phosphorus. So we only had 5 fields out of the 21 different sites where we had phosphorus that was below that 61 parts per million, which was a cutoff that says don't add any phosphorus fertilizer. So instead of testing all the rates, it ended up being a trial to see what would happen if you use more phosphorus than the recommended rate. And only 3 out of the 21 sites had any improvement in yield with added phosphorus. And out of those, there was only 1 out of the 21 sites that saw an improvement in yield when the soil test phosphorus was over 61. So I'll show you some of the numbers. These are 5 grower fields from 2010. The purple across here, that's the soil test phosphorus. This is the standard used by OMAFRA, yield in tons per hectare. And so no phosphorus, 40 or 50 kilograms, 75, and 100 to 120 kilograms. Now 100 to 120, sometimes that was the recommended rate of phosphorus. So out of these 5 grower fields, this one, numerically, the highest was in the no phosphorus. There were no significant differences in any of them. In some cases, we got a slight numerical difference with higher phosphorus, but in other cases, really no difference at all. And sometimes the numbers went in the other direction, which is why there was no significant difference when we ran the stats on this. We also did a totally different trial where we were looking at mycorrhizae. We had 40 and 78 parts per million, no effect on yield. And I'll show you those numbers as well, with or without mycorrhizae, either no phosphorus or 100 kilograms per hectare. And again, no differences in the yield of the onions with any of those rates. So what do we do? It looks like those OMAFRA recommendations are accurate for the 60 or 61 parts per million. So when they say no additional phosphorus is needed, you don't see any improvement in yield if you add more phosphorus. We do want to find some fields that have starting out with lower phosphorus content, so we can look at some of the other rates in that recommendations table. We might be able to modify some of the recommendations for nitrogen use as well. We don't currently have a soil test for nitrogen, so we're going on the general recommendations. But maybe the key is to look at tissue testing throughout the season and adjust any fertilizer based on tissue testing, which will tell you what the plants need at that moment. And you heard a little bit about the Picetta real-time tissue testing earlier today. And there will be a presentation that focuses on that tomorrow, so I'm not going to say anything more about that. But just to finish up with all this talk about rates of fertilizer, especially phosphorus, we've got another issue to resolve, maybe before we even talk about rates, and that's that we're getting different numbers back from different soils labs. We're working with Tajendra Chapagain from OMAFA, and there's also another researcher working on this. But last year, we took soil samples from growers' fields in the marsh, sent them to 3 different labs. SGS and A&L are in Ontario. I think many of you are familiar with A&L labs. Brookside is in the States, but we were seeing some very different numbers come back from the labs. If we look at the phosphorus column, SGS was almost 100 parts per million. Brookside was lower and significantly different, and then A&L was lower again. And only A&L actually came back low enough that would say you needed to apply some phosphorus. And we're also seeing differences in potassium numbers that came back. pH at least was all the same, so the labs are doing the same test for pH. But I was really surprised to even see different numbers for organic matter. And to look at it a different way, these are the 15 different fields from growers in the marsh. And again, if the first column's phosphorus, there were some fields with low phosphorus, and then we got up to over 100 parts per million. And these numbers are the average of those 3 labs. And we're seeing quite a range in potassium as well. And potassium, the no response is 181 parts per million. So I thought potassium numbers would be lower, but they're relatively high as well. So what's causing all of this? Work done by Kim Schneider's lab has shown that there's a couple of different things the labs are doing. So they are approved by OMAFA, but Muck soil is a really small portion of what the different labs do. So they're very consistent for mineral soil, but they seem to vary a lot for Muck. So one is how the soil is actually measured out, and the second one is how it's dried before they do the analysis. So this is Kim Schneider's work on for organic soils. If you weigh it out, it comes out at higher phosphorus than if you use a scoop and you assess it by volume. Mineral soil, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. And to make it even worse, different labs use different sizes scoops to measure out the amount of soil they deal with. And here again, this is different temperatures for drying the soil, different number of days, and depending how that varies, you get different numbers for phosphorus in the soil as well. And again, mineral soil doesn't matter. They're all very consistent. So what do we do about this until we get that problem solved? Recommended that growers use the same lab every year so you can compare from year to year. And I think most of you are doing this anyway, working with your crop consultants. If you want, you can send a sample to another lab, see how the results compare. We're going to be doing this study again, sending out the same sample to 2 or 3 different labs. We'd be happy to work with you with that. And if you're wondering about the recommendations, put in a test strip where you use half of the rate of fertilizer or no fertilizer just to see how it compares with your standard recommendations. And Geoff mentioned earlier today, but we will be doing work with the tissue testing again this coming season, and we'd really like to work with growers. So we'll do soil test and tissue test throughout the season so you can see how the tissue testing relates to your fertilizer program, and you're also helping us update those the information for the tissue test lab. So people have a different approach to how they think about fertilizer in the soil. Is it a bank account and you're building up the fertilizer so you've got a lot there whenever the crop needs it? Or is it a bucket that you can have enough in the bucket and that's good? You put in too much, it just runs out over the top and it's lost. You've seen our advertisement about our green book already a lot. And again, lots of different groups that have supported this, and thanks to our field crew that helped out last summer. And is there time for questions?
Yes, any questions for Mary?
So our last year's trials are written up in our green book if you want to go back and look at any of those numbers in more detail.
Anyone? Last chance? Thank you, Mary. Next up, we have the OFVGA update. And so we have just Stefan. Stefan's leading the charge. So welcome.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stefan, and I focus on labor and safety nets at OFVGA. Also work at the national level with FEGC and on both files. So I'm going to try to give you guys a focused update on Ontario, but also to the extent that I can, what's happening at the national level. Just a quick show of hands, who uses crop insurance here? Okay, and AgStab? No one uses AgStab in this room. Okay. All right, I'll keep that update really short then. Okay, so Mike Kromzak, he's an asparagus grower and watermelon grower, well, soybean as well in Tillsonburg area. He's the chair of our safety nets file, and he's also the vice chair of OFVGA. So on that file, I support him. He runs our committee, and I think it's I want to say Jody and Quentin that I don't know if Quentin gets involved in that technical level, but we've got someone, and I just can't think which grower would be from this group. But we've got representation from all the major grower segments within OFVGA's, let's say, umbrella on that committee. So Mike chairs that committee, and then we do our best to obviously incorporate kind of the muck crops perspective into the work. So over the last year, I'm going to focus on kind of 2025, but a lot of the work was sort of started in 2024. The increase to SDRM that was announced just before the provincial election, that was probably our priority push over the last a few years, culminated in that announcement by then Minister Flack. What that translates into is we had roughly 7 million for our industry for the upcoming year. And after that, we're looking at another, what's 23 minus 7? So 16, another 16 million added. So we're going to be looking at an extra 23 million in total for our sector added to that baseline, that annual baseline. So right now we're at 34 million for the entire industry. And once the full increase is phased in 2027, we'll be looking at a $57.5 roughly million program. So I think we're catching up at this trajectory. We're catching up with Quebec compared to where things have been. I think we've been quite a bit behind Quebec. By the time that this increase in 2027 is phased in, we're looking at much closer to, we'll be within less than a factor of 2 of Quebec. And right now we're almost like 2.5 behind them. Minister Jones, I think I'll let Gordon talk about what we're doing to sort of prime the incoming new minister. We've got our coalitions. We work with OFA, obviously, and with some of the other commodity groups that don't have supply management. Right now, our main focus is to prime the provincial government of our efforts to get extra support from the feds. And the feds are really hard to get money from. There's a lot of finger pointing back to provinces like, hey, we can't give you guys more money to AgStab. I mean, in this room, I don't think there's going to be a lot of tears about that. But the whole point of AgStab being kind of plateaued at 70% is the result of prairie provinces not wanting to put more money into AgStab. How many of you would be interested in AgSab if it was 85% trigger? Still none? Man, crop insurance must be good. Okay, interesting. The trigger. So you'd have to lose, right now you have to lose 30% of your historical margin to trigger. Like the old in 2000, yeah. Bring it back to 90. Well, I mean, I'll shoot for the moon before I go for the sun. I hear you though. Well, AgriInvest was a poor compromise because after that they kind of pared back AgriInvest as well. So now, yeah. Yep. 100%. And then they did cost share, which doesn't really help us all that much. Like, you make me guilty. I'm reliving the sins of the past of my forefathers in the policy file. I agree 100%. Of AgriInvest? At 70%? Yeah, it does. I mean, if you're, I want to be mindful of my colleagues, but I'm happy to have that chat. Right now, it is folks that have generally a large share of their income, of their expenses are eligible expenses. So if a large proportion of your expenses are eligible expenses, like a large portion is labor, fuel, fertilizer. If a large percentage, I'm saying, I don't know, like above 60% of your expenses, you're way more likely to trigger. And if you're mostly machinery based, like processing veg, for example, but also other crops where you're like less than 50% of your expenses are eligible, then it's really tough to trigger. So it depends. Greenhouse, for example, is more likely. I mean, don't tell them that. They're going to say they never trigger, but they do trigger because a high share of their expenses are. I don't disagree. At 85, you're having your deductible. Once you have a deductible, you're way closer to triggering. So, yeah. So there will be a webinar that OFVGA is putting on. I hope Jody and whoever supplies you guys with updates, Jody Mott, I mean, will send that information to you. So that will be information on the advanced payments program. Show of hands, does anyone use that program? Good. Advanced payments program has been above its historical interest-free portion for the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. Right now, I think the interest-free portion equates to between $15,000 and $20,000 of free money, for lack of a better words, because from my understanding, your loan provider, your bank, will not penalize you for taking that loan. There's an understanding from what I've understood across the banking community that the advanced payments program is a legitimate part of a farm's borrowing portfolio, and they won't give you a hard time about it. You're saving about $15,000 to $20,000 by taking that program. I've been told it takes about half an hour to an hour to do the paperwork. So highly recommend log into that one and then find out what it takes to participate. Farm Credit Canada is going to talk about their tariff interruption program, their loan program. I'm not saying take more loans, but at least find out what terms they would offer. And then there's going to be updates from Agricor on crop insurance and agri-stability. So last chance to change your mind for this year. At the federal level, so the APP program, usually you get $100,000 interest-free. One of our lobbying efforts was to get that bumped up. So right now it's at $250,000 for the upcoming crop year, $250,000. AgSab has gone up. You guys don't really care, so we'll get into that one. Once we get that trigger level raised up, and hopefully we can have that conversation. Tariffs and election. So most of my work in the last month has been to put together a written ask of what exactly would help in the short term with the tariffs if the tariffs hit us. Right now they've hit us for 3 days, like of actual tariffs, and they've hit us for plenty more on the kind of suppliers kind of being shifty and looking for new sources. So there's been plenty of damage already. So FEGC put out the official ask of what we're looking from the feds yesterday, and we kind of accompanied that by media push and interviews with farmers that are on the national BRM committee. So hopefully hopefully we get media attention, public attention, and political support for more financial support for our sector. A big part of the message is the US has been pumping money into its specialty crop sector, like a lot, over $3 billion once you can do the currency conversion. And that's just specialty crops. That's just our counterparts plus flowers down south. And so a big part of the ask is to come up with an equivalency. Okay, I probably am out of time, but I do want to highlight, I think I can skip most of that stuff. On the federal front, I mean, the whole overhaul of SOP and Ag Stream is real. And I'm going to say we have to take it seriously because the party that initiated the replacement, if you want to call it that, the overhaul, the review of those two programs, they're quite realistically going to be in power after this election. So this whole idea that SOP and Ag Stream are going to get overhauled, the same party will likely continue that work come May. So I think we have to be on top of our game on making a case for why what is currently good needs to stay good. And the loud message that we say is SOP is really, really good. There's a whole lot of good that shouldn't be broken. So that's probably a number one message. The other one is that you can't make the terms of employment worse for growers, or that you're making, let's say, enhancements for the workers at the expense of growers. So everything is guided by that. We've already submitted comments to the housing standards and the occupational scope, which is basically which NOC codes should be in the new program. We've got close to a final draft on this stream specific work permit, which is the Fed's new idea of the SOP programs permit, but they would apply to Ag Stream. And basically, if it all becomes one big pot, then the mobility or the ability to transfer between farms would be from any SOP employer to an Ag Stream employer, because it would just be one big program, one big happy program. So that's the idea there. Again, Bill George is a grape grower in the Niagara region. He leads the committee. And I should come in and know who the reps are. So I apologize. There are reps from the Muck growership from the Holland Marsh. Yeah, so I won't dig around for names, but that committee looks at our submissions, and those submissions then go to the feds. We also work with the FEGC to make sure that that we're as much in line with the national voice as well. We've also started working a little bit more with, well, we're always keen to make sure we're not in conflict with farms. So that's coordination with our partners is really important to us. There's 3 more papers, transportation, like who pays for the flight, especially if you have workers moving from farm to farm. It's fairly straightforward. We're recommending obviously that that the SOP model be used. Basically, don't break things that are working, and apply the good stuff to the new to Ag Stream. Wages and deductions. Ontario is in good shape. We pay very respectable wages compared to what the job banks say. Some other provinces, like in the prairies, they'd be looking at quite high increases to their wages because their SOP wage is quite below what local job posting wages are. Deductions, that could be radical. As we know, SOP right now, zero rent. The feds are looking at what do we want? So we've got some very interesting questions to ask ourselves. What kind of deductions would we want, given that it's been zero for 60 years now? And healthcare, fairly straightforward. Ontario has OHIP and we have WSIB. So there's not a whole lot there. The big question will be, should employers be allowed to take deductions off of the payroll if private insurance is offered? And I think I'll leave it there because Gordon, I want to point out that, whenever things are hot on one file, like federal level or provincial level, they're maybe quiet somewhere else. Right now, they're kind of hot on all fronts. Gordon, you'll come in. Gordon's been working with me on the municipal side of the equation. Lots of growers are having headaches with their municipality when they're trying to grow. Some of you are brave and make it through. Doug did a presentation at the Niagara Fruit and Veg Conference, I think it was 3 years ago, telling us how you made it through that journey. There's tons of headaches, tons of red tape, tons of municipalities that say no by default unless you can pick up the phone and convince enough councillors. And we're trying to find a way to make that more streamlined across the province. Yeah.
But you guys, as far as the housing goes, what's happening now, with the lot levies, okay? So in some areas, like when we put up our Mexican house, we didn't pay any lot levies. They didn't ask for any. And then, a friend of mine did it in the township just up the road, and he got nailed for like $80,000. So what's happening?
I'll call you. Yeah. So I'm obviously interested because the housing is TFW related. Everything that we're doing on this front is TFW focused. So it'll be relevant to TFW employers like SOP employers, Agstream. But Gordon is the expert on kind of the provincial policy statement and all that stuff. I'm going to bring it up. I couldn't do a whole lot of work without him on that stuff, but we're working together. So Gordon.
I'll try and be quick because I know Chris has a few things to go through as well. On the development charges, just to answer that question, that is a municipality by municipality issue in terms of how they treat that. It is something that's on our radar in terms of something that's increasing the costs of building worker housing on farm. And so there'll be some conversations at some point with the provincial government about how we can work together to try and create some baseline expectations of municipalities so they're not discouraging those kinds of investments, because it's good for the farms, it's good for the workers, it's good for the economy.
If you don't put it right, the problem is you want to build a proper place.
Yeah.
Put a foundation on it, build it right.
Yeah.
If you decide that you're gonna put, like, I talked to some guys from another area, what they do is they put, they almost build it portable. So they're investing the same amount of money for building it portable. They're putting some pillars down, building it on top of the pillars, and then it's still a permanent structure. So
Yeah.
But the problem is it's like a lot of things. As soon as we want to do it right, we get penalized. So you're forced to do it not right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And right. And that's something we're aware of. And I think I'll touch on the survey that's on the screen there. So we did put out a survey. I hope that there are growers in this room that are aware of the survey that we did on housing in relation to municipal rules and challenges they're having. That was open during the latter half of February and all of March. So I think we had a lot of good feedback on it. We're working through the responses now, and that will drive a lot of our next steps. And hopefully we'll be able to take that to government and address some of the challenges that you're raising, some other challenges that we're seeing on the provincial policy statement front where municipalities are not following what the provincial expectation is, and how do we get over those hurdles? And there's no easy answer, but we'll work towards that.
Point out that was the first point to Minister Flack.
Of housing, so Minister Flack, who was at agriculture, is now at municipal affairs, and he's of course still, from what I gather, is still holding agriculture as one of his core sort of industries he wants to support. And so I think we've got a good champion there that'll be within his realm to do work on this, as will be Minister Thompson, who's still at rural affairs, and Minister Jones, who's new at agriculture. So I think there's a good team there. We just need to be able to package what we need in the right way.
We got to get what we're expected to do for the swap program and what the building code calls for is completely different. Like in our bill, our permit was held up because our septic system didn't qualify, because according to the building code, our house was good for 20 people.
Yeah.
According to the swap program, was only good for 10. So we got to find some kind of balance where, and we're not double billing. We're definitely more than.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's.
Well, it's all like it's great what you got.
If it's yeah.
What you got, saying is they got to get everything right. standard that's kind of even happening
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah. Now, and standards are challenging too, because we also don't want to push a municipality into a direction where they actually increase their rules rather than decrease their rules, because there are areas where growers are benefiting from that. So there's a balance in how we approach that advocacy and coming up with a solution where hopefully we can make the situation better in one area without making it worse somewhere else. Anyway, I'm going to move on from this just because I don't want to hold up the schedule, and there's still a bit more to go through. So just it was mentioned about septic. The other thing we are working on related to worker housing is on septic ECAs for larger installs. Those are long, complicated, expensive processes to go through. And we've been working with MECP, the Ministry of Environment, to try and make a more realistic process for that and make it ease the burden on growers without impacting the environment, of course. It's been a slow go, but I think now that there's a bit of runway for the next few years with this government, we can try and get it done. Wash water is mentioned up there. I know that's important to a few people in the marsh, and anyone washing carrots especially. I listed there, I have nothing to update. It is an even more difficult conversation than the septic piece, but it is on our radar to work on. And I'm certainly connecting with Jody Mott quite a bit on that file. She's been supporting us. I mentioned blue box modernization. That is in implementation. That's provincial policy. It's changing how collection is done. It's changing who pays the freight in terms of the recycling costs. 100% of that is now on the brand owner. So if you have a branded bag of carrots or onions or whatever, if it's your farm name, whatever it is, then you would need to be part of the new program that used to be run by Stewardship Ontario. It's now it's RPRA, Resource Productivity Recycling something, and that might not be 100%, but you would need to be connected with that organization to be in line with that. Stormwater fees, stormwater taxes. I'm not sure. I think Jody mentioned that there was some consideration for that up in this area, but it's been more of an issue in highly urban areas where there's a lot of rural land, Hamilton being one of them. So it's something we're also looking at. Just provincial election, you all knew that it happened. We got new ministers. Minister Jones is at agriculture now. He has a background in the greenhouse sector, which is good for us, and we're certainly going to be trying to keep him up to speed and get him up to speed on outdoor production, because of course your issues are different there as well. Federal election, we have put out a federal policy priorities document. If you're looking for things you want to talk to with your candidates locally, that is on our website, and it has been distributed to our member associations. So Jody has it as well. If you want to ask her, you definitely get in touch with one of us. And tariffs, I don't think I need to say anything more about that. Stefan referenced the work we're doing to try and get ahead of and make sure government's primed to support the sector. Of course, I think around 4 o'clock today, we might have a better sense of what's coming down. Hopefully it's not as bad as what the worst could be, but I think we're being as prepared as we can under the circumstances. And I'm going to hand it off to Chris, and hopefully we're not putting things too far behind.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Gordon and Stefan, for starting this off. And I'm Chris Duvelshoff. So I work on the crop protection file at OFVGA. As you can see, I didn't get the memo about the gray jacket here today. So work on that for next time. So I work on the crop protection file. I'll try and keep this update to the most key things that we're working on, but just like to start off, our section chair for 2025 is Matt Shepard locally here. So we have really good input on Muck Veg for crop protection for this year, which is great. So some of the things that we're going to be working on is the PMRA reevaluation special review program. There's quite a bit of activity in that coming up for this year. The minor use program, which Josh gave an overview of this morning. So we're very active in working with him on minor use, both on specific files, but also on the program overall, like looking at the funding and so on for the program. And then on PMRA policy, so there's a number of things that have been happening over the last few years on policy. So things like tank mix, drone application, we've got closed transfer, fees that registrants have to pay, a lot of different things that we're touching there as well. So just starting off, I just wanted to mention this in context of everything else that's happening. So this is the PMRA's new registrations for last year. So this is all the new technology that came to Canada for the first time in 2024. So these have never been registered before. Just shortening up the slide here, there's one conventional product, and that was mentioned earlier this morning. That's the diflufenican herbicide from Bayer. Which does look promising, but it looks like an uphill battle to actually get it registered onto hort crops, unfortunately. And then for biological products, which is great, but they tend to be more specific and generally a narrower control spectrum. So this is sort of the typical year now in terms of new technology that is coming, like 1 or 2 conventionals and then a handful of biologicals. And so that's standard. So what that really says is the work through the minor use program is crucial to extend what we already have, but then also preserving the activity and the life of the current technologies, be that through IPM approaches, crop rotation, and so on, just to prolong the life of the tools that we do have. So looking ahead for regulatory decisions, PMRA for 2025. So 2 types of decisions coming out. The ones on the left are the final decisions. So looking at chlorothalonil, that was mentioned by Josh, also abamectin, so the agrimectinecto pros. This side is basically impossible to change in my experience once those decisions come out. Not sure about chlorothalonil. Abamectin is looking pretty promising. Then on the right side of things are all of the consultations that are, at least on paper, are supposed to come out this year, and it is going to touch quite a number of products. So we're going to be looking at a couple of the older fungicides, Antanos and Reason, Novaluron with Rymon and Cormoran, and then the 2nd generation neonics are coming up again. So clothianidin, Clutch, Titan, also Suppresto falls into that category as well, seed treatment. Thimethoxam with Actera and Cruiser. And then the group 5s are coming up for the first time. So PMRA has to look at this stuff every 15 years through the legislation. It's now been long enough that the group 5s are coming up to that point as well. So Delegate and Entrust are coming through the system now for the first time. When these consultations come out, there is an opportunity to change the decision, depending on what it is. If it is a negative outcome, as part of that, sometimes we need information on how the products are actually used by the industry. So the label might say 6 times, but the growers are only using it once or twice. That's really helpful information for us to have at that point to feed into those consultation processes. And so depending on what happens there, you may be hearing from us on any one of those during the year. On the policy side, Josh covered tank mix policy. Basically, you don't need to change anything this year. That's delayed to 2026. And I just wanted to finish off talking about this closed transfer systems. It's something that you may have come across. It does certainly apply to some muck products. So the closed transfer concept really has been pushed more through the European agencies over the last number of years, but it is starting to show up on some of the North American products in Canada. So it's basically closed handling of the product. So moving it from the jug of crop protection into the sprayer without any sort of open contact with the air. So moving the product from the original container, rinsing it, measuring it, diluting it, and transferring it into the sprayer, all through hoses and couplings that are tight enough to prevent any spillage of the product, basically. So these are the products that it currently applies to. So it is on the Lorox L herbicide label, ethyl and dibrom. That has that standard label statement. There's no getting around closed transfer. The products that require it, it's pretty clear on the label, but they don't have the standard language, is Bravo as well. That applies only to bulk totes, not to 10-liter jugs. And then liquid Captan, and only under some use scenarios. It also may be a requirement of 7XLR, but it's not entirely clear on the label. So again, just repeating, it's the direct transfer of pesticides from the container to the sprayer. These are some slides I borrowed from Dr. Jason DeVoe, who works for OMAFRA, and isolating the process from the operator in the environment. I know it's one more thing to think about when you are spraying and mixing. The only thing I would say about this is that this came onto the label because all the other mitigations weren't effective enough. So just using the maximum amount of like gloves, coveralls, all the other PPE was not enough to keep the product. So if closed transfer was not an option to provide that further step of mitigation, Loroxel would be gone. So that's the value of having the closed transfer on there. I know it is one more thing. So what do these look like? A couple of commercial systems that are there for sale in Ontario right now. This Goat Throat is one, and then Easy Flow, just a couple. There are others as well. And so that is opportunity to measure the product and transfer it within a closed system. And then where is this going? So there's a lot of evolution, as I was saying, in Europe with these systems, moving to more digital systems, which do have the advantage of, like, if I want 250 milliliters out of a jug, it's like a digital plug, put the number in and 250 milliliters come out. So there's some interesting things that way evolving. And so that's one thing to keep in mind this year if you are using any of those closed transfer systems products. And then just wrap things up for OFVGA. Just here are our contacts. We do have one other colleague with us on the policy team who wasn't here today, and that's Janique Kennedy. She's our newest member of the staff, started about 6 months ago or so. And we talked about municipal stuff, but I think some of her focus is going to be more focusing on some of those municipal files where there's some challenges. So with that, thank you very much. Apologies if we went a bit over here, but feel free to get in contact with any of us and we'll point in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you, OFVGA staff. Yeah, we will. You can follow up with them at the end of the day if you have any questions. Next up, we have our final industry update of the day. That's BASF with Cheslea, who's going to get us back on track.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. For those of you I have not had the pleasure to meet, my name is Cheslea Steenbergen. I'm one of 2 horticulture reps with BASF covering Ontario. So I go all the way down to Leamington, up to the Meaford, Thornbury area, and then across here to the Marsh. So I will do my best to kind of get us back on track here and hopefully get everybody on the road home now that the weather has taken a turn for the worse. So nothing new, particularly product-wise from BASF this year. So I was planning on spending our time just doing some review of our portfolio. So going into the year for root vegetables, we're going to focus on Maravon, Pristine, and Circadus, as well as Serapho, which I'll briefly talk about. And then for bulb crops as well, it's going to be Maravon, Sevia, Circadus, and then Zampro is always a go-to at the end of the year for downy mildew and late blight. So jumping into it, Sevia is BASF's newest Group 3 fungicide. So the Group 3 fungicides are the demethylation inhibitors. Sevia does work as a demethylation inhibitor, and it's very effective because it blocks C14 demethylase, which inhibits ergosterol and essentially makes the fungal cell lose cell wall function. So it kills this fungus very effectively. Sevia provides very consistent control because of its orientation and how it binds to that target site. So typically the demethylation inhibitors, these group 3s, kind of bind and release from the target site, whereas Sevia locks in and then it changes its orientation to lock into that target site and not move. So whereas we see this binding and releasing with other group 3s, we don't see that with Sevia. So we get very consistent control over that 10 to 14 day window that we're expecting the control for. So Sevia has been on the market for a few years now, and we're very happy with the levels of control that it provides. It initially was on palm fruit and grapes, and it is now expanded into lots of other good crops as well. So you guys might not just be growing carrots and onions, you might be doing some other stuff in market vegetables and things like that. So this is the list of the expansion crops that were added about a year or 2 ago now. I wanted to highlight, though, Sevia's abilities on onions and garlic. So in particular for this one, we're looking at botrytis suppression. So although it doesn't have stemphyllium, which I know that we're all going to be talking about for a long time, and everybody's very concerned about it, there's still some other diseases that we are concerned about. And keeping these plants very healthy will help them battle stemphyllium in some other way, shape, or form and secure some marketable yield. So botrytis suppression, and then we've got purple blotch and leaf blight as well. So looking at botrytis here on onions, you can see that the low rate and high rate are very, very similar for control. As I said, this is suppression. So when we're comparing it to our own product, which is Maravon, the group 7 and 11, Maravon obviously provides much better control. And this could be a rotational product to go alongside Maravon, to get into your rotation, to get away from some of these group 7s a little bit, and could be a very nice tank mix partner with something that has a little bit better botrytis control. So not something to rely on solely, but something that can be used as a tank mix partner to round out our rotation a little bit. Moving on from Sevia, I wanted to briefly touch on Maravon. So Maravon is BASF's newer group 7 and 11 fungicide. So the group 7 in Maravon is the same as the group 7 in Circatus, so fluxapyroxad. It's a very systemic product. As we know, that was mentioned earlier today, there is some resistance concerns with Stemphylium in the marsh. So the fluxapyroxad does have some resistance, but not complete resistance out there. So we can still use Maravon as a product in the rotation for Stemphylium on onions, since it has this pyroxlostrobin in it as well that is known for the plant health benefits that we see. So as you can see here, we've got Stemphylium suppression. So there is a max of 3 applications a year. It says no more than 2 sequential, but we would be a lot happier, and it's much more recommended to use 1 application and then maybe switch back to something that's not a group 7, like an Allegro or something like that, to kind of get away from these SDHIs and keep this product having shelf life for as long as we can while we try and battle this disease. Maravon's also registered on our root vegetable group as well. So again, we've got 3 applications here. We have seen a lot of success with Maravon going on carrots, keeping these tops really nice and green and healthy and protecting against powdery mildew. So we get really nice harvestability when we're using Maravon in the rotation on carrots. Next up, everybody's been talking about their biologicals today, so I thought I would plug in ours as well. So Serapel is BASF's biological. As familiar, maybe some people are a little bit more familiar with biologicals, maybe you're not, but I think it's a good idea to get a little bit of a rundown on them. So to preface it, the biologicals are never going to work the same as our systemics unless we get really lucky and find a really special one. But to me, Serapel is very special and it works very well. So these types of biofungicides are meant to be used in supplementation to your current program and help round out your rotation and add a bit of oomph, I guess, if you're lacking some or if you have a bit of a gap in there. So Serapel is a spore-forming bacterium. So it has a couple modes of action that we'll talk about here briefly. But essentially how these biologicals work, they have these colony-forming units, which are the spores, similar to how you would describe an active ingredient load in your systemic fungicides. So Serapel has a very high level of colony-forming units or spores versus our competitors. So we have a very high concentration of these spores, which makes it very effective against diseases across a broad range of conditions. So Serapel in particular has these metabolites that communicate using quorum sensing, and these things can get disrupted through a few different things. So these miscues happen when the wrong metabolites form at the wrong time. So in industry, this often happens when we're trying to make these biologicals, which are organisms, they're living things, function contrary to how they want to behave in nature. So the formulation of these products really matters. It must be very pure, which Serapel is, in order for them to function properly and uniformly across a broad range of conditions. So as I mentioned with the modes of action here, biologicals can have quite a few. Serapel in particular has 3, so it forms a physical barrier across the plant surface along the foliage to compete with nutrients. And then when these spores are there in the correct amount, these spores germinate and produce these metabolites, specifically iterin and surfactant, which then have fungicidal and bactericidal activity. So they communicate with each other, and then they can help ward off different diseases. So here you can see the Serapel starting to attack the mycelium of a pathogen cell. You can see that mycelium on the left, and then you'll see the metabolites that are communicating and start to disrupt the membranes of the pathogen cells on the right. So that's what it works really up close. You would never see this to the naked eye, but that's how it works under a microscope for the folks that are developing these things. So as I said, Serapel is very persistent across a broad range of conditions. So we've got more tolerance to UV light and a broader range of temperatures in which it can function. So typically we see pathogens dormant between 30 to 50 degrees when we're looking at things that Seraphyll's targeting anyways. So between 20 and 30 degrees, this is where iterin is produced, which is one of the main metabolites that Seraphyll produces to ward off these fungicides and bacterias. And then between 10 and 20 degrees, this is where surfactant is produced, which acts as a surfactant and also has these fungicidal and bactericidal activities. Surfactant also acts as a rain enhancer because it is a surfactant in itself. So we see a lot more flexibility across these climatic conditions and a lot more durability with rainfall and rain fastness. As mentioned before, the strain does matter. So Seraphyll is a bacillus product, so it's an MBI 600. So basically this means that Seraphyll it has the iterin and surfactant that I mentioned before, and it also produces iterin only under that 10 to 20 degree window, which other biologicals do not. So this makes it a very unique product in the biological world so that we can have two kind of defenses in terms of metabolites communicating with each other across these temperature ranges while these various diseases are starting to act on our plants. Another unique fact with Seraphyll, as I mentioned before, it is meant to be a tank mix partner, so it can go with plenty of things, and we do see a very symbiotic effect with the SDHIs, which is very handy since we're using a lot of group 7s, it seems, in the marsh, and we want to extend the shelf life of those products. So you can tank mix Seraphyll with most things. There's only a few that you can't. So we just want to make sure that these spores stay healthy on the plant. So watch outs to tank mix Seraphyll with our Metaram, Metalaxyl, Mancozeb, and chlorothalonil. So those are the watch outs to tank mix with, but other than that, you have the go ahead. And if not, just please do reach out to myself or your retail supplier to double check before making an application. So these are the various rates that we've got going on with Seraphyll. As you can see, there is a broad range here. So for carrots, we have partial suppression on leaf blight and powdery mildew. So partial suppression, you're expecting between that 20 to 60% control range. So that's where we really do recommend having a tank mix partner and not relying on this solely as your disease management program. Same thing here, looking at our cucurbits and not registered on onions at this point, but we are looking into it for future use. Last but not least, I wanted to touch on Simcoe, which is a brand new insecticide to the market a few years ago and only one of its kind in the group 30s. So bringing this new mode of action to the table here to kind of reduce resistance and get away from some of the other more popularly used insecticide mode of action. So the group 30 has very fast knockdown activity, and we see great efficacy among a large group of insects. So for potatoes, we're using it for Colorado potato beetles. And then this is the crop vegetable group that we are using it on now. So again, a variety of rates here. I would like to highlight that Simcoe only has MRLs in place for potatoes. So anything on the vegetable crop side that you're using it for must stay domestic. So no MRLs for the vegetable crops, just potatoes. With that, I hope I sped through that quickly enough to get us back on time here. So our QR code is up on the right if you want to have access to our complete vegetable portfolio. The other thing I would like to highlight is BASF's Safety Scouts program. So if you go on that QR code, you can go into the site and then sign up for Safety Scouts. So if any of you guys have little children running around anywhere, this program gets you a 3 to 6 year old safety vest. So that nice highlighter yellow and orange, just to make sure that you can see these people at all times since you put them somewhere and they move. So with lots of increasing distractions in tractors and things like that, make sure you get signed up for that. And we do have our 2025 Ag Rewards program. So if you're not signed up or have any questions with that, please feel free to come see me anytime this afternoon or tomorrow. I'll be here as well. Questions?
Thank you, Chelsea. Any quick question, Chelsea? Before we let her off the hook? Good to go. Thank you. Okay, last but not least, we have Shawn Janse to bring us the carrot cultivar results from last year.
All right. Well, thank you for hanging in there today. Thank you. So as Dennis mentioned, today I'm going to do a quick run through on the carrot variety trials from last year. And also, this was the first year we did in 2024 a beet variety trial. There was some interest from some growers, and there was also a lot of interest from the seed reps. So we conducted it. It wasn't super successful. We learned a lot from it, and we hope to be more successful in 2025. We are repeating it. So I also will show a few highlights from that too. The carrot variety trials, it was seeded on May 16th. We had 31 varieties from 6 different companies. We harvested them on the 21st to 28th of October. We did the evaluations January 6th to 23rd. As far as some highlights from the trial go, we put irrigation on. It was about mid-June approximately. At that point in time, there's a little bit of a spike in temperatures, and we noticed a few carrots still on a little smaller side. We're starting to get burned off, so we put a little bit of water on just to try to reduce any type of heat canker that was present. We had fair stands and vigor at germination. Very low weevil damage in the trial when it's all said and done. There'll be a slide to show that a little bit later on. They were average to good yields, pretty much similar to what we saw in 2023. It was very low incidence of cavity spot. This probably was one of the lowest years from the variety trial aspect at looking at cavity spot over all these years. So it was quite a significant drop in that. We had low levels of blight, really wasn't an issue out in the field. Average lengths, good color, but we did notice some slightly unevenness of color inside the varieties when you had them spread out on the table and we were doing the evaluation. And we did find a few cedars here and there in the trial also. So looking at percent marketables in the cellos, the trial average was just about 83, ranged from basically 91 to 74. In the jumbos, it was 85, 9, ranged from 94 to 67. And both of the trials, we saw approximately a 5% increase in percent marketable compared to what we had in the 2023 trial. I think the biggest aspect here was we noticed in the calls less undersize. So I think the carrots just got a little bit bigger, a little thicker than what we had seen in the 2023 trials. Looking at the top 6 ones that had the highest percent marketable, Naval from Bejo at about 91, and then jumbos, Orchestro from Villemorin at 94. Soneto from Villemorin at 89.6, and then the jumbos Bravia with the second ones. Nevado and Nevado seeded at a more cellular rate, approximately about 25 seeds a foot, and then Nevado seeded more at about a jumbo rate, about 18 seeds a foot. Also were the top percent marketable. And the last couple is Arpeggio from Villemorin at 87.7 and Canberra from 89.5. The interesting thing here is in the past, quite often we see varieties repeat themselves year after year. They're in that top area. This year was completely changed. Nothing was a repeat from last year. So you'll see some points. I'll show you some points in a little bit of some varieties that where they were repeating. Looking at yield, again, you have to do this. We're taking a 1.16 meter sample 2 times out of our variety trials. So 1 extra carrot can soon add on a few bushels per acre. So just use that as a comparison, please. So in the cellos, the trial average was about 1367. It ranged from 1731 to 956. Similar to last year, if you looked at last year's cello carrots to, 23's carrots to 24 carrots. In the jumbos, trial average was 1574, ranged from 1886 to about 1,000. But we saw an increase in the jumbos. So in the jumbos, we saw a little more, I think a little more weight, a little more size. As I also mentioned, the percent marketables bumped up because I think also we had less undersized carrots. So I think that's where we made the gain on the yield also. Looking at yield, the top cello one was Nevado from Bejo. And anytime you see a number behind the name, that means that for Nevado was in the top 4 for yield in the trials. So it's 2 years in a row that that's been up there as a top one. In the jumbos, Orchestro from Villemorin was our highest one at 1886. Envy from Stokes in the packaging. Berlin. So Berlin for the last 5 years has been in the top yielding one in the jumbo type carrots. Not necessarily always second place. It could have been first, could have been third, could have been fourth, but it's always in the top numbers there. So in the cells, Arpeggio, 2 years in a row, Villemorin at 1615 and Belgrado 1773.
And the last one's Brilliance from Stokes at 1590 and Calindo from Illinois Seed Company at 1702. Looking at oversize, so anything oversized, we're considering anything over 1 3/4 in the crown area of the carrot, in this area of the carrot. So in the cellos, MV, Orange Slice, Jefferson were the top ones that had the highest percentage of carrots that were oversized. And the trial average in there was about 31. And in the jumbos, where you want to have that bigger carrot, you're aiming for it. Some of the ones we've already seen show back up again, Canberra, Bravia, and Berlin. And basically the trial average there was 64%. And these were the ones with the highest amount, 86, 82, and 77. But when looking back at the 23 trial, they were pretty much equal to what we saw in there as far as the trial averages. Looking at scores or the quality of the carrots, we base that on such things as uniformity of shape, length, and width, appearance, internal and external color, blight, resistance to green. The trial average was 6.9, or we consider just kind of average. It ranged from 5.9 to 7.8. 6 cultivars at the highest score. And as a whole, I would say comparable to 23 in score ranging. So the top one, Arpeggio from Villemorin, Novato from Bejo in the jumbo types. And you're starting to see a bit of a pattern here, right? We're seeing them showing up in the percent marketable. We're seeing them showing up in the yield. Now we're seeing them showing up in the score. So Sonetto from Villemorin at 7.5, Bastia at 7.4. So anything at 7+ is considered good or quite good. Brilliance, 3 years in a row where Brilliance has been up there and as far as qualities go from Stokes at 7.3, Baldito from Bejo at 6.83. I think there's one more. No, that's it. Cavity spot. So this year when Tyler and I were doing the assessment, it was a little bit weird. Right away, I noticed that there didn't seem to be as much cavity spot on a thing. And I thought maybe I wasn't seeing things properly or we were missing or something was going on. Talked about it here at the station, and Kevin had already did the assessment on the California carrot cavity spot trial. And he mentioned too that somebody's coming in or out. There was very little cavity spot noticed on there also. So we kind of proceeded on through, but we ended up having only 24% of the carrots having cavity spot found on them. So 75% of the carrots, we did not find any cavity spot on as a trial average. And even then the size of lesion though was similar to what we've seen in the past, a light to medium. So about a 1 to 3 millimeter size lesion ballpark, but it ranged from one variety having only 13% of the carrots with a cavity spot present and a lesion size of low or 1 to 2 millimeters to one variety having over half of them with a medium light size lesion. So we actually saw a 36% drop compared to 2023 as a trial average. So if you put that together, we were almost at 60%, and this year we're down to 24%. So it was significant. And again, most of the carrots, we only found 1 or 2 cavity spots on the carrot. Sometimes we see them and they'll have 4 to 5 or higher type of a range. So we had a bit of a discussion here trying to figure out what was happening. But when we look back at the end of the year here, when Kevin gathers all the weather data and kind of processes all through that, we saw that August was below average for rainfall. September was even that much more below average, and October was really below average for rainfall. So for the last 3 months of the carrot's life, more or less, it was getting drier and drier and drier. And we know that cavity spot is affected by moisture. So it probably just was a simple fact that we were nice and dry, and it just really didn't give that Pythium a chance to really get going or get established. So it was in one sense not surprising that we saw these lower numbers. We also have a company, Newnham's, does a private cavity spot trial here on site. They were in March and did their evaluations, and they also were finding super low levels of cavity spot. So as a whole, we're not surprised. But looking at the varieties that had the lowest amount of cavity spot, Novato, Orange Slice, Orchestro, 2384, and Trophy Pack, some of the names we know, and a couple of repeats from last year in varieties. And again, 13% light to 15%, and the trial average, which was only 24. So really good this year. Rust fly and weevil. I just put this up here just to show you, but basically nothing. The trial average of all the carrots that we assessed, so we had the 30 plus varieties. We take about a 50-pound bag sample out of each replicate. So more or less about 150 pounds for each variety. However many carrots that may be in there, we found probably 2 or 3 carrots that had weevil damage. That was it. And then as far as rust fly, we had a 0.1% damage in rust fly. Again, there was probably a handful at the most of carrots that had any type of rust fly. The application of Ramon has really made a huge difference in the weevil. Before we kind of got that product registered, we were up in the high percentages and it just tailed right off to nothing. And I think too, the dryness, especially for rust fly in the second generation, correct? Second generation, probably what was happening a lot of times when they were laying their eggs, it was probably just too dry and they were getting desiccated. So we weren't getting that tunneling and effect larvae attacking the carrots that we normally see in the fall when it's a little more moisture. So it was significant this year. Moving on to adaptation. So adaptation varieties that companies are just kind of maybe trying out on the muck soil here, trying to see how things are going. Might be something that might get registered, or I should say should be commercially available in the next few years. So we had 5 varieties in the adaptation for the carrots this year. And just quickly going through them, the 3 that had the highest percent mark was Calatis from Enza at 81, Carina at Enza from 71, and a numbered variety from Illinois seed company at about 69.5%. And again, you'll sort of see these same names come repeating themselves, just like we saw in the variety in the main trial. Yield-wise, now yield in the adaptation was not that great. It was a little on the disappointing side. It also was a fair bit of weed pressure in this back area. So I think when we were doing some weeding, we also were doing some thinning, which didn't probably help us too much. But there's the varieties there in the approximate yields that they had. And again, sort of a repeat of what we saw earlier. And then in score quality wise, again, basically the same varieties, except Calbrea came in at a higher score. Looking at the storage trial. So these are actually the 2023 carrots that went in. We had 33 varieties from 6 companies. Storage trials about 38 weeks. It's usually early or late June, early July when we pull them out and start taking a look at them. As far as some trial highlights go, percent markable range from 73 to 1 being as low as 18.9. That gives you a bit of an indication what's going on here. Weight loss ranged from 27 to 6.7%, which actually was a decrease compared to the 2021 trial. Yes, because the 2022 carrot trial was a complete loss. So going back that way. But decay was huge in the trial. Those carrots from 2023 did not store very well at all. We saw a lot of problems with decay. A lot of tip rot was in there and a fair bit of canker rot was in there. But decay ranged from one variety, the lowest it had was 26 to a high of 81%. And you'll see that reflected in the green book. Basically, I just said it stored poor. The only interesting thing was inside, so each of the samples that we take 1 storage sample from each of the replicates. When we did the evaluation, we found that rep 1 might have stored better than rep 2 did, which stored better than rep 3. We saw variation within the reps, we see variation within the varieties, which is very understandable. Some carrots store better, some don't. But this year we noticed differences with inside the reps themselves. I can't remember off the top of my head if rep 1 or rep 2 or rep 3 stored the best, but we did see that correlation going through. So rot was basically the main concern that we had. It was just rot. And the carrots that fared the best, I think is probably a best term. Trilliants from Stokes at 71% of the carrots still being good. Carvel from Illinois, that's about 72%. We do not take into account sprouting. We're just basically looking for rot or decay. So the good ones over here, and obviously the ones with the rot on the other side. Orchestro from Vilmorin, about 71%. Resistifly from Seminova, about 67.7%. Novato from Bejo, and Sonetto from Vilmorin at 65.2 finishing off. And when we're looking at rot, we are, it's kind of hard to see, but very obvious rot here. But in these here, there could be a decent sized canker or something like that that would, you'd have to carve out, or would probably not, you wouldn't want putting in a bag. So therefore, we're calling it a rot. Weight loss. So the ones that had the least amount of weight loss over that period of time, the trial average was basically just about 10%, but compared to the 2021 carrots, it was a 10% decrease in weight loss. So they did keep their moisture a little better, but Resistifly, Belgrado, Novato, Baldito, and Narvec were the ones that had the least amount of weight loss, from about 6.7 to 7.6 percentage points in weight loss. Decay. So the varieties that had the lowest amount of decay, again, it's bumped up a fair bit, but Trillions, Orchestro, Carvel, Resistifly, Novato had the least amount of decay, ranging from about basically 27% to about 32%. Again, we saw a 20% increase in decay. Decay was a significant thing. This number 2, the 45.6, these balanced out some varieties that were very high in the 60, 70 plus range of decay. So this, in one sense, if you did an overview of the trial, you would think this would be a lot higher, but it averaged out a little bit because some of these better varieties in here. So that's real quick little breeze through the carrot trials. As I mentioned, we did beet variety trials. So this is the first time we did beet variety trial, and I think it's probably been 15 plus years. So seed companies kind of approached us, talked to us a bit about it. We know there's more beets being grown in the Hollow Marsh area, in Hollow Marsh itself and in the area. And we wanted just to see what type of varieties are out there and what's available. When we did this, or when we planned this, we did not think that we had rhizomania here on the station. It's still debatable. At Grower Field Day, when the seed reps were going through the trials, there is some signs that appeared to be similar to rhizomania, but we had a few other things happen in the trial. So we're not 100% sure if that was or was not the case. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. But we went through, we seeded them on July the 2nd. We had 17 varieties from 6 companies, harvested them on the 30th and 31st of October, evaluation from the 12th to the 18th of December. When I seeded them on July the 2nd, the target was to try to have something of a decent markable size for Grower Field Day for you guys to have a look at and the seed companies to look at when you're here to visit. That didn't work out so well. At that point in time, a lot of them were quite undersized, and we kind of held out as long as we possibly kind of could, as you can see, sort of the 30th, 31st, before we took our yield samples to try to have something of a decent size to do an evaluation on. At Grower Field Day, there was a fair bit of leafy material. The crowns were quite leafy, showing signs. Some of the seed company reps were thinking is a good sign of rhizomania. There was quite a bit undersize, and a lot of the roots were quite hairy and I wouldn't say disformed, but quite hairy. So there was all these things, indications thinking that it was. The trial did end up having saturated soils when it was at about the 2 to 4 true leaf stage. So I don't know if that was a major factor in affecting it. And it's kind of stunted the growth at that point in time, and it's kind of sat for almost a month. The trial really didn't do a whole lot when they should have been growing. In all, we did, at germination, there was fair stands and vigor. When we did the harvest, there was poor yields. And most of the beets, when I did the numbers, most of them fell only in the 1 to 2 inch size range. So quite disappointing that way. By the time we did harvest, also the stand count had dropped significantly too. It was way down. There was low levels of blight. They were actually quite clean and decent. Very uneven in sizes. You'll see that in a couple of pictures in the future. We had great big ones down to little tiny ones. The exterior colors were good. But once you got into the interior, there was some variation kind of happening in there, and they were a bit on the poor side. So looking at the ones that had the highest percent marketable when it was all said and done, Rotiti from Rick Swan at 76.5, Monty from Rick Swan at 76.1. Scarlet and Zeppo. Zeppo, I think a name a lot of fellows know. basically 75 and 71%. And Red Titan and Red Cloud at 70.6 and 69.4. It's a little hard to see, but maybe in some of the pictures too, these were taken just after grower field day, but there was also some different sizes you could kind of see. Like here's a pocket here that's a bit on the small side. Back here in the corner, you can see too a little undersized. This is what we kind of saw in the trial with some variation from the stunting and whatnot. Looking at yield, again, I sort of mentioned poor stance. When it worked out at the end, I was quite shocked to see it only averaged basically 3.6 beats per foot. So we were aiming for 12 range. So we were really significantly down. Again, the size range, most of them fell in the 1 to 2 inch size diameter. The second biggest grouping was sort of the 2 to 3 inch diameter. But out of those 17 varieties, because again, the yields were not great at all, the ones that had the highest yielding out of it was a numbered variety from Illinois at about 400 bushels an acre, Grenada from Norseco at about just under 400 also. But this gives you a really good idea what we were looking at, sort of all the way down in the range. And then over here too. Population's there for this one, but huge variation in sizes, unfortunately. Zeppo and Bohan were the last ones as far as highest yielding goes. And again, you can see the size range that we were dealing with here, kind of on a very disappointing side. And also, sorry, you can kind of a little bit too, some of the roughness of some of them also. Scores. So again, we're looking at quality. So what we kind of based it on this year from talking to the seed companies and getting some information from them, what they're kind of looking for and what we should be evaluating on. We base it on uniformity of size and shape, smoothness, internal, external color, and zoning, how the layers through the beet. Neck finish, root attachment. The trial average was 5.324. Basically, very rough exteriors, rough necks, and in the zoning was another big area where there was a lot of differences and looking rough. Trial average ranged from 4.1 to one variety actually being pretty decent at 7.5. So I just did the 3 top ones as far as score goes. Monty from Rick Swan at 7.3. Picture is not super great, but you can see pretty much the same color all the way through. Not a lot of discoloration or zoning inside of the beets. Zeppo, a name I think we're pretty familiar with, again, pretty decent coming through at 7.51 or good. And the last one, Granada from Norseco at 6.7. This up here in these discoloration or these zones where you get some whitish material and whatnot was very common through the majority of the varieties that had evaluation, was cutting them open and having a look at them. So the data is in the green book. We do have a sample in storage, which we're going to soon look at for storage quality of beets, because it's pretty much that time of year where you wouldn't be hanging on to them too much longer. And we are going to go ahead and do it again for 2025. We're going to move the location of them. So hopefully that makes a difference. And we have some samples we were hoping to send away for testing to see if we did have Rhizoc mania or not. We don't think so. We're thinking it's more environmental factors that were affecting the beets than the Rhizoc mania, but we're going to see from there. But we are repeating it, and hopefully I'll have a much better trial for you guys for next year in 2026 when we do this all over again. But anyhow, all the information again is in our book, Green Book, as always. Green Book's out in the front counter out there. Please help yourself to that. It goes into far more detail, a lot more comments and things like that are in those books. So I just tip of the iceberg of the information here. So please take a book and have a good look through. And as always, guys, just remember too, the Muck Station has the website. We have our YouTube channel. We have Twitter. So take a look at those. The green books are all on the website. The IPM reports go on the website. The YouTube channel's got some stuff with robotics and some other trial stuff, and your nematode videos on there. Tyler's nematode video. Twitter, Tyler sends out Twitter things when something important's happening or we're seeing a spike in something out, especially with pests. So keep that in mind also. And then just to finish off, of course, we look after the variety trials, but we have help doing that. So Tyler is on board here helping out too. And then we have 2 summer students. We had Maya and Adriana, and I thank them very much too for all the help. We spent a lot of time out there weeding and chit-chatting as we're doing this to get ourselves some variety trials for results. So special thanks to them. And I think that's it then for today. Yes. Thank you very much for coming out today. Thanks for hanging in there through this unpleasant weather that's happening out there. Drive safe home, and we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow.